You think you choose. Then, in a quiet moment, you notice something else choosing first. Desire leans on the scale, fear fogs the glass, and the story you tell yourself arrives a split second after the impulse. The Laws of Human Nature isn't a book about other people. It's a mirror for the parts of you and me that move before we speak. In this video, we're going to make that movement visible so you can live with more clarity, less chaos, and far fewer toxic entanglements. We'll walk into the brain's older rooms and see how ancient circuits pull at our decisions, then step back from the heat long enough to let reason breathe. We'll learn how to sit across from narcissism without getting pulled into its orbit, how to recognize the subtle patterns that make certain people dangerous to your peace, and how to read the tiny cracks in the masks we all wear. We'll turn toward the shadow within, those impulses we hide to seem good, and give them honest work instead of letting them run the house. And as these ideas connect, you'll start to feel something steady under your feet, a way to understand why people do what they do, and a way to choose better for yourself. Take a breath. Set down the noise for a while. By the end, you'll have a clear map you can actually use. Let's begin. Law 1. The Law of Irrationality. Master your emotional self. You think you're steering the ship, but most days the current is steering you. The mind loves the story of control. The body keeps a quieter ledger of impulses, moods, and unspoken fears. The paradox is simple and uncomfortable. The more certain you are that you're purely rational, the more completely your emotions are driving the wheel. Real power begins where that illusion ends. So let's walk slowly into this first law, as if stepping from a noisy street into a quiet room. You are not a machine who occasionally feels. You are a feeling creature who occasionally thinks clearly. For millions of years, life survived by instinct alone, long before language gave us the ability to explain ourselves. Your brain still carries that history. At the base is the old reptilian circuitry that regulates your rhythms and reacts before you can reflect. Wrapped around it is the limbic system, the ancient mammalian seat of feeling, where fear swells, where desire warms, where envy pricks and pride tightens your chest. Only later came the neocortex, the elegant layer that speaks, calculates, drafts plans, and writes justifications. Here is the daily conflict. Sensations rise wordlessly from the limbic world, and the neocortex scrambles to translate them into tidy explanations. Translation is imperfect. A surge of envy becomes moral outrage. A flicker of fear becomes a grand principle. A bruise to status feels like cosmic injustice. We think we're reasoning, but we are often narrating our chemistry. This is not a verdict against you. It is an invitation. Rationality isn't a cold identity you adopt. It's a practice of noticing the fog as it rolls in. Begin by admitting what the law asserts. Humans are fundamentally irrational, not wicked, not broken, just moved by currents we do not always see. When you accept this, a small, important distance appears between stimulus and response. In that space, your better choices live. Without that space, mood becomes map. You magnify threats, cling to comforts, and call it a truth. Look closely and you will see familiar traps. Your mind, like mine, prefers pleasure over pain, ease over friction, certainty over doubt. So it hunts for evidence that lets it relax. When you already want something to be true, you collect confirming proof like trophies and ignore what disturbs the picture. When you feel a powerful rush of conviction, you take intensity as accuracy, as if heat were the same thing as light. You meet a polished person and your eyes paint on extra virtues, or you meet someone disheveled and your mind dims their intelligence without a single fact. You gravitate to the group that sounds like you because belonging feels like safety. And soon you mistake the comfort of agreement for the reality of correctness. And when something goes wrong, your first reflex is to swivel the mirror away, to explain, to blame, to preserve the image of yourself as fair and reasonable. These are not crimes. They are patterns, but patterns unattended become prisons. Certain conditions inflame these patterns. Old wounds make perfect trigger points. A comment that barely grazes one person can pierce another who learned long ago that love is conditional or status is fragile. Sudden changes, an unexpected win, a sharp loss amplify feeling and narrow your field of view. Euphoria makes you reckless. Panic makes you rigid. Under rising pressure, the primitive layers of the brain take the microphone. You speed up, bark, shut down, or cling. Some people act like accelerants in your nervous system. Their presence calls up old scripts of competition, reassurance, approval, or defiance. And then there is the group effect, waves of feeling that move through crowds. What you would judge as impulsive alone begins to feel noble together. Anxiety turns into certainty. Certainty turns into zeal. None of this makes you weak. It makes you human. But if you want a calmer life, you must learn to feel the swell and still choose your course. Rationality is not the absence of emotion. It is the art of partnering with emotion without letting it captain the ship. Start with a gentle, honest rule. Assume your first interpretation is emotionally colored. Say to yourself, I am perceiving through a mood. What else might be true? When an email sharpens your jaw, when a post stirs envy, when a delay ignites indignation, pause as if you've placed a hand on your own shoulder. Ask, what is the feeling beneath the story I'm about to tell? If it is fear, name the fear. If it is pride, name the bruise. If it is desire, name what you hope to gain. Language does not kill a feeling, but it brings it into daylight where choices multiply. Lengthen the gap between trigger and response. Time cools the chemical spike and lets the neocortex catch up. If something angers you, give it the gift of one more sleep. If a decision exhilarates you, walk around the block with the opposite case in mind. Play your own devil's advocate. Collect arguments that disagree with you as if they were tools, not enemies. Ask yourself what evidence would make you change your mind, and then go look for it. You will still have preferences. You will still have hunches. The point is not to sterilize your life, but to remove the fog that turns impulses into inevitabilities. Turn the lens inward when things go wrong. Before you reach for explanations about other people's incompetence or malice, run a quick audit. What part of this did my assumptions help create? Where did my certainty blind me? What pattern am I repeating? This is painful at first because the self-image resists correction, but it is a clean pain that buys you freedom. Blame keeps you agitated and dependent. Responsibility returns leverage to your hands. Release the fantasy of remodeling other people. Much of your emotional chaos comes from trying to sand down someone else's nature to match your tastes. People are who they are, a mosaic of drives, fears, histories, and needs. The more you push against that reality, the more frictions multiply. Accept the broad outlines of their character and work with what is actually present. Create distance where you must, make clear agreements where you can, but stop bargaining with the hope that your irritation will transform them. This acceptance is not surrender. It is an intelligent conservation of energy that you can spend where it matters, on your own responses, your own systems, your own standards, and study yourself like a craft. Keep a small record of situations that hook you. Notice the times of day when your thinking is sharp and when it blurs. Track the environments and relationships that bring out your best judgment. Build rituals that downshift your nervous system, a breath you return to, a phrase that grounds you, a deliberate delay before you send by post or promise. Train your attention on reality, not fantasy. Real numbers, real timelines, real trade-offs. Ask boring questions and love their answers. What is the base rate? What will this cost tomorrow? What am I not seeing because I want this to work? None of this will make you perfect. That is not the promise. What it will make you is steadier, less yanked by moods, less fooled by surface, less seduced by the relief of certainty. You will still feel everything, but the feelings will no longer impersonate facts. You will still belong to groups, but you will keep your own mind inside the circle. You will still care about being seen as good and capable, but you will let truth, not image, set your course. Stand here for a moment and notice your breathing. Notice the tug of an old worry trying to write today's script. Notice the quick story you tell about a person who irritates you. Notice the glow that comes when someone praises you. Imagine placing each of these on a small table between you and the world. You can observe them, learn from them, and choose without them choosing for you. This is the beginning of mastery, not a clenched neutrality, but a quiet authority over your inner weather. You like to imagine you are in control of your fate. In a deeper way, you are just not in the way you first believed. Control is not domination of life. It is the cultivation of clarity as life unfolds. The first law asks you to accept your irrational nature so you can work with it. If you want more calm, start by naming your waves. If you want better decisions, slow the moment down. If you want cleaner relationships, stop playing sculptor with other people's stone and begin sculpting your own habits. Tonight, As the day closes, think of one recent decision you made from heat instead of light. Revisit it in cool air. Ask what feeling drove it, what evidence you missed, what you will do differently when that feeling returns. Then carry that commitment into tomorrow like a simple tool in your pocket. The world will still be noisy, but you will move through it with a steadier hand. And slowly, the ship will begin to answer to you. Law 2, the Law of Narcissism. Transform self-love into empathy. You crave to be seen, and so do I. That isn't a flaw, it's a fact of being human. The paradox is this. The more desperately we try to be the center of the story, the less we are truly seen. The more we learn to see others clearly, the more visible and powerful we become. If you've ever felt that ache for attention, listen closely. It doesn't make you a monster. It makes you a beginner at turning self-love into empathy. From the first breath we take, attention is oxygen. A baby survives by drawing eyes to its needs. An adult only learns to survive well by shifting those eyes outward. Somewhere between those two states lies a spectrum, and all of us stand on it. Some days you may feel the hard pull at the lower end, where insecurity hides behind a high gloss of certainty. There, everything is personal. Every silence feels like a threat, and conversations become mirrors you keep angling back toward yourself. You're not evil when you slip down there. You're empty, and you're trying to fill the space quickly. Other days you land in the middle, functional, open enough to listen when invited, able to enjoy attention without hunting it. And then there are rare moments when you reach the high ground. You forget yourself without losing yourself. You read the room like weather. You feel the moods of others like changes in light. And you move with a quiet confidence that calms the air around you. We call that empathy, but it's really a mature form of self-love. You care for yourself so well that your attention can afford to travel. The first shift is an attitude. Stop assuming you already know who people are. Every person is an undiscovered country, with a different climate and language and history. Walk in as a visitor, not a conqueror. Leave your preconceptions at the border. This isn't moral advice, it's strategic. When you approach someone as a mystery, your mind opens, your senses sharpen, and you begin to notice the signals that are always there but easy to miss. The way their shoulders relax at certain topics, the small catch in the voice when a memory stings, the micro smile when they feel understood. You are not trying to decode them to control them. You are learning their grammar so the conversation can carry real meaning. The body speaks first and clearest. Thoughts are complicated, layered with defenses and stories. Feelings leak through posture, breath, pace, and tone. If you want to develop empathy, give your attention to the music beneath the words. Slow the conversation down inside yourself so you can hear tempo, not just lyrics. Notice how a person's face changes when they shift from facts to fears. Notice your own body as you listen. Do you tense, rush to reply, plan your next point? Relax your chest and unclench your hands, and something simple will happen. The other person will feel it. Your calm makes their story safer to tell, and the more they tell, the clearer they become. Then bring your thinking mind to the table, not as a judge, but as an analyst. Empathy is not blind agreement, it's disciplined curiosity. When someone irritates you, when your first instinct is to label or dismiss, do what Lincoln trained himself to do. Move closer, not away. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Treat dislike as a signal that you're looking at a surface that hides a story. Ask yourself what need this person is protecting, what fear they're managing poorly, what timeline or pressure you can't see from where you stand. You are not excusing bad behavior. You are explaining it to yourself so you can respond with accuracy instead of reactivity. Precision is kindness to both of you. Empathy becomes a skill when you invite correction. You will guess wrong. Everyone does. So you check your read out loud, gently, without performance. It sounds like this week left you stretched thin and a little ashamed you couldn't do more. Is that close? If they say no, you are not exposed. You are trusted. People feel your effort and they bend toward it. Over time, this feedback loop trains your attention. You get better at matching words to moods, better at sensing the moment a conversation should pause, better at choosing when to speak and when to stay quiet. You will still have your needs, but they won't push you to steal the spotlight. They'll guide you to build it so everyone can see more clearly. But to grow this capacity, you must also learn to recognize its counterfeits. Some people appear attentive because attention is their method of control. They listen like hunters, collecting details to use later, nodding with perfect timing, mirroring your language so you feel seen while they map your weak points. Their sensitivity is real but self-serving, and you'll know it by the tightness you feel around them and the way you leave the exchange more dependent than before. Others wear the mask of virtue. They perform empathy in public, speak the right language, and cast themselves as victims or saviors because those roles guarantee an audience. Their compassion only flows when it can be witnessed. Notice how quickly their concern evaporates when there are no eyes on it, and do not feed your attention into that engine. Then there are the healthy ones, the rare people who can lead without making everything about themselves. They are optimistic without being naive, confident without being brittle, and their focus travels outward naturally. Stand near them, and you'll feel your nervous system slow down. Watch them carefully. Learn from their spacing, their timing, their restraint. If you want to climb the spectrum, start with your own fuel. The lower ranges of narcissism run on a kind of hunger that no amount of applause can satisfy. So you build a different reservoir. Keep promises to yourself, so your self-respect grows from action, not from praise. Do the small, unglamorous work that stabilizes your identity: sleep, movement, meaningful effort, honest review. The more solid you feel inside, the less you need to grab attention, and the more attention you have available to give. Attention given is never lost. It returns as trust. Trust invested patiently becomes influence. Influence, practiced cleanly, becomes leadership. In your next conversation, experiment with 3 tiny moves. First, ask one question you don't know the answer to, not to steer the talk back to yourself, but to learn something specific about their world. Second, name a feeling you observe softly and tentatively, and allow them to adjust your label. Third, when the moment invites it, share one honest sentence about your own state, not a performance, a fact. This reciprocity keeps empathy from curdling into performance. It becomes a bridge you both walk. Over days and weeks, these small moves add up. The people around you will feel safer, tell you more, and depend on you less for validation and more for clarity. Your presence will shift from loud to steady. You will be chosen for responsibility not because you shout, but because you understand. None of this makes you saintly. It makes you useful. It doesn't erase the part of you that wants to be admired. It teaches that part to relax. And here is the quiet surprise. When you stop chasing the light, people start turning toward you on their own. Because you see them, they feel real. Because you make them feel real, they trust you. Because they trust you, they listen. And because they listen, the room changes. This is the alchemy of empathy. Self-love transmuted into attention that feeds the whole system. Tonight, try a simple reflection. Think of the last conversation that left you frustrated. Rewind it slowly. Where did you make it about you when it didn't need to be? Where did you assume instead of asking? What might have been the unspoken fear in the other person? And what one sentence could have made it safer for them to tell the truth? Do not judge yourself harshly for what you see. Just choose one small adjustment for tomorrow. Attention is practice. Empathy is a muscle. And the more you use it, the more your life fills with relationships that do not starve you or drain you, but strengthen you. You will still have days when the hunger returns, when you reach for the familiar mirror. On those days, breathe, lower the glass, and look out the window. Someone is there, waiting to be seen. When you see them clearly, you will also see yourself steadier, warmer, and far more powerful than applause could ever make you. Law 3, the law of role-playing. See through people's masks. You think you meet people, but most days you meet performances. The paradox is that we hide to be loved and end up loved for the mask. What changes everything is the moment you learn to see the stage lights, the makeup, the practice timing, and still hold compassion for the actor beneath. People are like the moon. They only show you one of their sides. Schopenhauer said it plainly, and life confirms it softly every day, if you are willing to look. We all curate. We edit our feeds, iron our tone, cut away the awkward lines, and present a cleaner self to the world. That is not a sin. It is a survival habit. But a mask cannot seal perfectly. Heat escapes. Light leaks. Truth slips out in flashes the body cannot control. If you want to know people as they are and carry yourself with poise among them, you must learn to read those leaks, and you must tend to your own. Begin by slowing your eyes. Let a conversation be a field you walk, not a corridor you race down. You will feel the difference immediately. The forced smile that stalls at the mouth while the eyes stay cold. The voice that brightens half a tone on praise yet hardens on someone else's success. The shoulders that square like armor when a topic threatens status. The feet that angle away as if the body were already choosing the exit while the words say, "I'm listening." These are not grand reveals. They are micro-expressions, quick electrical flickers that cross the face and posture before the mind can edit them. You do not need to pounce when you see them. You only need to notice. The more you notice, the less you are fooled by the highlight reel people hand you, and the more kindness you can offer to the human story beneath it. To see clearly, learn a person's weather in ordinary conditions. Everyone has a baseline, their usual tempo, their natural volume, the way they gesture when relaxed. Watch them in neutral moments and store the pattern lightly in your mind. Then watch what happens under bright sun or sudden storm. Excitement tends to speed the voice and scatter the hands. Stress narrows the gaze and tightens the jaw. Shame pulls the shoulders in and turns the head away. Aggression lifts the chin and shortens the breath. What you are comparing is not a good and a bad, but usual and a shifted. The shift is the signal. Sometimes it points to fear, sometimes to envy, sometimes to a simple need for space. You don't diagnose, you adjust your pace, your questions, your expectations, so that truth has room to breathe. Practice in public without intrusion. Sit on a bench for 10 quiet minutes and let scenes pass. Notice who leads and who follows in a couple's walk, who interrupts and who yields in a group's laughter, who performs for the room and who tends to it. Notice your own body while you observe. Do you tighten when you see dominance? Do you admire the peacemaker, resent the showman, miss the anxious child and the loud adult? The point is not to become a cynic cataloging flaws. It is to train your eyes and soften your judgments at the same time, to hold two thoughts at once. People protect themselves with roles, and most roles were learned in rooms where they once had no power. Some signals whisper dislike, even when the words are sweet. A compliment can arrive with eyes that do not light and pupils that do not open. The lips purse for half a second as if tasting something bitter. The chest goes still as air is held back. You will feel a small mismatch in your own body, the unease that comes when music and lyrics do not match. Trust that feeling as a prompt to slow down, not to accuse. Envy is a common human heat. Pretend it isn't there and yet it turns into frost. Give it room and it often melts into something speakable. The person wanted to be seen too, or feared being left behind. The difference between a fake smile and a real one is not technical knowledge. It is your willingness to notice the eyes, the cheeks, the softening around the brow. When the smile is true, the upper face joins the party. Dominance feels different in the air than kindness does. You will hear it in who commandeers the pause and who cannot resist filling silence, who answers questions asked to someone else, who interrupts with high energy and expects the room to treat it as charm. Dominance is not always cruelty. Often it is habit. Learn young, rewarded often. But if you can spot it early, you can place your boundaries with less drama. You will choose where to stand and how much you will yield before the first interruption arrives. You may even decide to let a person perform their strength without letting it direct the outcome. That is its own quiet power. Deception, when it shows up, rarely appears as fewer words. It often arrives as more. People who hide reach for animation to distract. The gestures widen, the anecdotes multiply, the details run ahead of the question. If you sense this, resist the urge to confront like a prosecutor. Let the story breathe until its own weight makes it wobble. Then ask one clean, specific question and watch the first beat after it lands. The body will answer before the mouth does. A flicker in the eyes, the throat swallowed, the face touched, the foot that tries to step away. You are not out to win. You are out to understand what truth would cost this person and whether the relationship can afford that cost. While you are learning to see, learn also to be seen with intention. Impression management is not fakery. It is the art of aligning your outside with your best inside. Let your body say what your words mean. Keep your tone warm when your intent is welcome, steady when your aim is firm. Offer smiles that start behind the eyes and spread at their own pace. The face knows the difference and so does the room. Give care to first moments, not because you worship them, but because they set the rhythm others will follow. And then, just as important, become a little less available than the world expects. Absence is not indifference. It is space for intrigue and respect to grow. When people cannot map you perfectly, they approach with more attention. Predictability breeds sleep. A small unpredictability keeps conversations alive. Let sincerity be your quiet costume and honesty the lighting you choose. You can project saintly qualities without pretending to be a saint by making your actions slightly better than your words and letting time do your advertising. None of this means you stop trusting. It means you trust differently. You trust patterns over promises, congruence over charisma, small steady signals over big declarations. You will still get fooled sometimes. Everyone does. But you'll get fooled less, and you'll recover faster, because you'll have trained yourself to return to the baseline, to watch the shifts, to listen beneath the script. And perhaps most importantly, you'll turn the same lens on yourself. Where do you get loud to hide a fear? Where does your smile stall when a friend succeeds? Where do you talk too much to keep a truth from appearing? You are not the villain for wearing a mask. You are wise when you admit it, kinder when you loosen it, strongest when you can remove it without losing your shape. So pause here at the doorway back into your life and set a small intention. In the next conversation you have, notice one micro-expression and change nothing. Just see it. In the next first impression you make, let your words and your body line up. In the next moment you feel compelled to fill the silence, allow it to stand and let the other person reveal who they are. Over time, this gentle practice turns the world from a hall of mirrors into a room with windows. The masks won't vanish, but the light behind them will. And when you learn to see that light in others, you will start to feel it more steadily in yourself, a calmer, clearer presence that does not need to perform to be real. Law 4. The Law of Compulsive Behavior determines the strength of people's character. You don't meet people in a single moment. You meet them across time. The first impression is a sketch. The truth is the engraving that appears after pressure, repetition, and wear. Character is not an accessory we put on for the world. It is the groove cut into us by years of small choices that seemed unimportant at the time. A character is destiny. Heraclitus said, "You feel the weight of that line when life stops being easy." When the music fades and the room grows quiet, what remains is what you have practiced being. Listen for a second to the hum under your day. Every habit is a tool in your hand, carving you into a shape you'll have to live with. The ancients used the word a character for a sharp instrument that stamps metal or wax. One strike leaves a mark. Many strikes define the coin. Childhood is the first stamping. The family weather, the early rules of love and safety, the small rewards and punishments that teach the nervous system how to brace or soften, but adulthood continues the engraving. You wake, you choose, you repeat, you lift or you duck, you speak or you hide, you stay with the task or you reach for relief. By middle life, the pattern is familiar, and under stress it becomes obvious. The mind can say anything. The pattern tells the truth. If you want to know the strength of someone's character, do not ask for their intentions. Give attention to how they handle friction. Watch them when plans slip, when the email stings, when the praise goes to someone else, when a child interrupts, when a stranger is rude, when the day runs long and no one is watching. Strong character shows up as steadiness when the easy mood is gone. It isn't loud. It is persistent. It does not panic at the first obstacle. It pauses, adjusts, and returns. It does not frame every problem as a personal insult. It can learn something new without mistaking instruction for humiliation. It can work with others without needing to be the star or the martyr. Strong character is patient in the right ways. Patient with process, not with excuses. Patient with people, not with patterns that erode trust. Weak character is the opposite weather. Big promises in clear skies, sudden storms when pressure arrives, quick blame, thin curiosity, brittle pride, a calendar full of starts and a desert of finishes. None of this is about perfection. It is about direction. Actions repeated over time are the map. If someone shows you reliability once, you have a pleasant data point. If they show you reliability 100 times, you have a road you can travel. And if they break under every inconvenience, if they burn bridges and rename it honesty, if they need a new enemy every week to feel alive, you have a warning sign written in large, friendly letters. People tell you who they are by what they repeat. Believe the pattern. This law begins inside you. Before you judge anyone else, step into your own workshop and look at the tools you keep reaching for. Which reactions do you rehearse when you're tired? Defensiveness, sarcasm, withdrawal, superiority, self-pity? Which strengths do you practice? Returning to the task, asking better questions, listening past your ego, taking a breath when pride is hot. You cannot replace your character the way you swap a coat, but you can sand down the harsh edges and stop deepening the grooves that lead you to the same cliff. Awareness interrupts compulsion. Compulsion is simply yesterday's coping strategy pretending to be today's only choice. When you can name the pattern, the next move opens. You lengthen the pause, you sit with the feeling without obeying it. You pick the useful action instead of the familiar one. Over months, the engraving softens. Over years, a new mark appears. When choosing partners, business, creative, or intimate, put character above intelligence, beauty, and reputation. Intelligence without character can rationalize anything. Beauty without character can buy time while the bill grows. Reputation without character is wind in a costume. The person who tells the truth when the truth is inconvenient, who shows up when the work is dull, who shares credit easily and takes blame cleanly, who learns quickly and forgives slowly but fully. This person multiplies your life. The charming comet who scorches every orbit will keep you dazzled while you circle the same crater. Look past the sparkle. Ask the quiet questions. What do they do with Una? What do they do with a weight? What do they do when someone else gets the light they wanted? There are patterns that corrode a team or a romance no matter how often you repaint them. The hyper-perfectionist sounds dedicated and looks tireless, but watch the wake. No one can help them. Nothing is ever handed off, and the project becomes a hostage to their need for control. The relentless rebel sells you on originality and ends up allergic to structure. Every suggestion feels like a cage, every authority a personal enemy, every correction a betrayal. The personalizer listens closely when the topic is them, and here's persecution when you bring up shared reality. Small feedback becomes a wound that must be tended forever. The drama magnet creates gravity with crisis. When things grow calm, a spark appears, an offense, a feud, a disaster that pulls attention back where they can feed on it. The big talker has a mouthful of milestones. Deadlines pass, files gather dust, and you're left holding the plan while they hold the microphone. The sexualizer blurs every boundary with flirtation, turning neutral spaces into arenas of pursuit. Desire becomes a solvent that weakens trust and focus. The pampered prince or princess glides when the wind is at their back and collapses when asked to carry weight. Comfort is their native soil, and any roughness becomes an injustice. The moralizer condemns loudly what secretly fascinates them. Their righteousness is a stage that hides the shadow behind it, and one day the mask slips exactly where they pointed. These are not monsters from a manual. They are common grooves. If you see them early, you save yourself years. Measure slowly. People can act well for a month. They can even act well for a season. Time is the fairest judge we have. See how a person treats those who can't reward them, how they behave when no one is keeping score, how they repair after they are wrong, how they hold power when they finally get some. Ask gently for examples and watch the body when they answer. True strength tells its story without inflation. Weakness puffs, rushes, changes the subject, blames the weather. And turn that same measurement on yourself. When did you last finish something hard in the dark without applause? When did you change your mind publicly because better facts arrived? When did you apologize without a but, and then demonstrate your apology with a change? If you recognize your own compulsions, don't despair. Shame is an accelerator for the very patterns you want to slow. Treat the weak places as muscles, not curses. Choose one small behavior to repeat until it becomes part of you. 5 more minutes of effort when you want to quit. 1 question before 1 defense. 1 day a week where you deliberately delegate. 1 hour where you leave a problem unsolved and return with a cooler head. The brain learns by doing. Character hardens by repeating. You will not feel heroic while it happens. You will feel a little bored and a little proud. That is the right temperature for growth. In the end, this law frees you from superstition. Spirits and gods do not steer your days, your character does. You cannot control every wave, but you can become the kind of person who does not capsize at the first swell, who knows which harbor to aim for, who keeps a steady hand when the sky turns. Tonight, think back on a recent disappointment and read it as a page from your engraving, rather than a stroke of fate? What pattern of yours helped write it? What small repetition would begin to write a different paragraph tomorrow? And as you move among others, carry this quiet standard. Notice the pattern, honor the pattern, and choose your distance by the pattern. When you do, you will find your life filling with people whose presence steadies you, and you will feel under your own skin the slow relief of becoming someone you can rely on when it matters most. Law 5. The Law of Covetousness. Become an elusive object of desire. Desire does not ask permission. It wakes before you do. The mind says, be satisfied, but the eyes keep searching, the hands keep reaching, and the heart keeps inventing the next horizon. Here is the paradox that rules so much of human life. We chase what we don't have, and the moment we hold it, the image shifts, and the grass moves one field farther. If you have ever felt that restless pull, you are not broken. You are human. The work is not to kill desire. It cannot be killed, but to learn how it moves, how it chooses, how it fades, and how it returns. When you understand its current, you stop drowning in it and start steering with it. Most of us are taught that the cure for insecurity is full exposure. Show everything, explain everything, confess everything, and you will be loved for who you truly are. There is truth here, but not the whole truth. People want honesty, yes, but the kind that still gives the imagination room to breathe. We are narrative creatures. We fall in love with suggestion, with the half-lit corridor, with the outline that invites us to color it in. Total familiarity can flatten desire. Not because you are unworthy, but because certainty dries up the springs that feed the mind's private cinema. What moves people is not possession, it is the pulling motion of almost. It is the sense that there is more to see, more to learn, more to earn, more to unlock. If you make yourself entirely obvious, the story ends too soon. If you make yourself intelligently legible but not exhausted by explanation, the story deepens. Think about the last object, person, or path you wanted badly. Somewhere in that wanting there was distance, a small gap between you and it. That gap is not the enemy, it is the generator. Desire needs tension, like a violin string needs stretch to make a clean note. When you are always available, always explaining, always agreeing, there is no tension to tune to, nothing for the imagination to work on, and the music dulls. When you are a little colder than the room expects, not as a game but as self-respect, you create space for curiosity to cross. When you state a thought plainly and then leave silence where the other person can wonder what else you might be thinking, you invite investment. When you withdraw for a day or a week, not in punishment but in rhythm, people feel the shape of your absence and measure your presence differently when it returns. Distance correctly placed is not cruelty, it is oxygen. Desire is also social. We rarely want in a vacuum, we want what other people seem to want. A restaurant looks better with a line outside. A person seems more magnetic when they are already chosen. This is not shallow, it is human calibration. We use others' attention as a rough measure of value. You can resent this or you can understand it and work with it. If you are negotiating, don't arrive as if this is your only chance. Cultivate alternatives, quietly and truthfully, so your posture says you have options. If you are building a life, do not beg for validation. Demonstrate momentum. People want to be pulled into a current that already moves. Attraction multiplies where attention converges. And when you stop pleading for that convergence and start creating reasons for it, desire begins to echo. There is another lever that works at a deeper level. Hint at transgression without falling into chaos. Much of the world is gray and safe. We are told to color within the lines. A part of us longs to step over them. Carefully, intelligently, and with purpose. When you associate yourself with ideas that feel slightly illicit, unconventional, defiant in a sane way, you wake up the part of the mind that leans forward. When you share a fragment of knowledge that sounds like a secret, you imply there is a door only a few can see. When you dangle something just out of reach, a path that might be faster, a method that might be sharper, a vantage point that might be higher, you do not trick people. You invite them to try. The ethical line is simple. Never promise what you cannot deliver, never bait with lies, never pretend to be what you are not. But do allow your edges to be interesting. The world is full of noise. Let your signal carry a quiet voltage. This law is not a trick for social games. It is a mirror for your own life. Before you try to become desirable, ask what you actually desire. The most common tragedy is to spend years chasing what other people seem to want and arrive at a peak that feels like someone else's view. Sit with yourself long enough to name what pulls you when there are no eyes on you. Is it mastery, which requires solitude and repetition? Is it influence, which requires restraint and clarity? Is it closeness, which requires courage and steadiness? If you do not know, the world will sell you 1,000 cheap cravings and call it destiny. Your time is limited, trade it for something that keeps paying you back in meaning. Live this way and your presence changes. You tell enough of the truth to be real and keep enough of your mystery to be alive. You set boundaries not to punish but to protect the conditions under which you can give your best attention. You move in and out of reach like the tide, present, warm, engaged, and then go on long enough to renew your value and your self-respect. You let others want you without letting their wanting own you. You cultivate rivalries where it makes sense, multiple offers, multiple routes so that no single person or gatekeeper becomes your oxygen. You let your work speak and your reputation travel a few steps ahead, but you never stand still long enough for people to think they have seen the whole of you. At the same time, you stop confusing intimacy with oversharing. There is a difference between honesty and exhaustiveness. Share the part that builds trust and connection. Hold back the part that is still forming, the part that needs silence to grow. Leave traces, not transcripts. Let your actions carry more weight than your claims. Let your results become the story others tell. Desire at its best is not just about wanting you. It is about wanting to rise near you because proximity lifts their standards, sharpens their senses, and widens their world. And remember the gentle warning buried inside this law. The objects you covet are often mirrors for your own missing pieces. We imagine that the new thing, the new person, the new role will cure a hunger that is older than the search. Sometimes it helps. Often it fades. So build a stable core under your wanting. When you are steady inside, you don't have to hold people too tightly. When you are proud of the quiet work no one sees, you don't have to flood the room with noise. When you know what you are actually after, you can let passing fashions pass and reserve your reach for the rare, important yes. Tonight, ask yourself a kind, simple question. Where am I too available, too explained, too eager to be chosen? Pull back one small step. Then ask, where am I chasing desire that belongs to someone else? Let it go and replace it with one thing that is truly yours. In a week, notice what changes. The quality of your attention, the way people lean in, the way silence begins to work for you. Possession rarely moves the world. Desire does. Become the kind of person whose presence awakens it, not through manipulation, but through rhythm, restraint, and a life aimed at something real. Up when you do, you will find that the greener grass is not somewhere far away. It is the field you are cultivating day by day on your side of the fence. Law 6. The Law of Short-Sightedness. Elevate your perspective. You can win the moment and lose your life. That is the quiet tragedy of short-sightedness. The present is loud, so it feels true. The future is quiet, so it feels optional. But your days add up to a shape, whether you plan it or not, and the shape you're making is decided less by what you feel right now than by what you can still see when the noise fades. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain. The world is a wall, and all you know is the next step. Now imagine the summit. The same world spreads out into rivers and roads. Paths that seemed random down below reveal a pattern from above. Nothing in the valley changed, only your height. Perspective is elevation, and elevation is freedom. Most of us live pressed against the glass of the now. The message pings, the headline flashes, the opportunity knocks, and our nervous system rushes to meet it because the present feels urgent by design. Your biology was tuned for survival, not strategy. It rewards quick reactions, fast judgments, the next safe patch of ground. But life in the modern world isn't a sprint from one bush to another. It's a long climb with weather that changes, and if you're always chasing the next warm patch, you walk in circles. The remedy isn't to kill emotion or ignore reality. It is to step back from the heat long enough to see the larger fire you're tending. A far-sighted person isn't cold. They are calm. They feel everything. Then decide from a higher place. Start by learning the art of detachment in small doses. When something inflames you, a slight, a delay, a tempting offer, imagine you are stepping a few meters to the side and a few months into the future. From that angle, does this moment still deserve all of you? If it does, engage fully. If it doesn't, let it pass without dramatics. Train this like a muscle. Pause 10 breaths before you reply. Sleep once on any decision that changes the next year of your life. Write the impulsive message in a draft and reread it from tomorrow's eyes. Detachment is not indifference. It is respect for consequences yet to arrive. Fear and excitement both narrow your field of view. Fear makes the tunnel dark. Excitement makes it bright. Either way, it's still a tunnel. Calm widens the frame. When you feel yourself shrinking toward a single point, must act, must defend, must buy, must clap back, do something physical to soften the grip, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, slow your exhale. Biology listens to posture. As your body settles, invite the bigger question. If I do this, what else happens? Not just the first effect, but the second, third, and fourth. Life is a web, not a line. The decision that wins you applause today might cost you trust tomorrow. The shortcut that saves an hour may steal a year. Map the chain reactions before you tug the thread. Ask your values to lead you out of tactical hell. Tactical hell is that frantic state where you fight on all fronts to protect your ego and call it a standing up for yourself. You answer every critic, argue every detail, chase every slight, and somehow drift farther from the life you said you wanted. When you feel trapped in skirmishes, step to the mountaintop and ask, what is my real aim here? Is it respect, mastery, freedom, love, health, impact? Which action moves me toward that? Which fight is only a flare burning oxygen I need for the climb? Strategy is saying no to battles that make you small. Beware of ticker tape fever, the addiction to scrolling headlines, notifications, and sentiment spikes as if they were a compass. Free compass. Markets tick, feeds refresh, rooms react, and your mind, hungry for certainty, tries to surf the froth. But froth is not the ocean. If you let the feed set your mood and guide your plans, you will always be late, always winded, and always convinced that urgency equals importance. Rebuild your attention around slower signals, weekly metrics instead of hourly moods, base rates instead of anecdotes, trend lines instead of flashes. Give your long-term vision an actual place to live. Written goals, a quarterly review, a calendar block that belongs to nothing but thinking. The world will try to rent that space with noise. Stop subletting your future to the present. A related trap is drowning in trivia. Without a clear arc for your life, everything looks like it might matter. You say yes to details to feel useful, to messages to feel responsive, to meetings to feel included, and you confuse motion with progress. Decide what few things are central to your climb and let them burn bright enough to reveal what can be delegated, automated, postponed, or ignored. A far-sighted person does not hoard tasks to feel needed. They protect attention to do what only they can do. The rest gets handled by systems, by other capable hands, or not at all. And the world keeps turning. People who are chained to the present are easier to move. They can be bought with the nearest reward and frightened with the nearest threat. That is why the short-sighted are so often manipulated. Promise them speed, and they will pay any interest. Scare them with tomorrow, and they will sell today. Elevating your view returns your agency. When you can see across seasons, patience ceases to feel like suffering and begins to feel like power. You stop lunging and start positioning. You stop pleasing and start choosing. And because you are harder to rush, you are harder to use. Avoid sinking your days into those who live in permanent react mode. You can care for them without copying them. Their constant alarms will pull your nervous system down the mountain if you let them. Set gentle boundaries with the people who only bring fires. Seek out the ones who carry water, calm builders, long players, those who make decisions with an eye on the horizon. If you can't change your company, change your cadence. Move slower than the room, speak later than your impulse. Count consequences, others skip. Leadership often looks like unhurried attention. This law is nothing without a practice. So practice. Before you say yes to the shiny invitation, ask what it buys and what it costs, not just in money but in freedom, focus, and reputation a year from now. Before you clap back, ask whether the argument grows anything you will still care about when the season turns. Before you pivot your project, ask whether you built enough to judge it fairly, or if you are abandoning it at the first hill. Picture that mountain again. From the base, the path that climbs looks slower than the path that cuts across. From the summit, you can see that shortcuts only look short because the next ridge hid their length. Your perspective can rise even on ordinary days. Walk without your phone and let your mind play with longer questions. Read a few pages from something older than the week you're in to stretch your sense of time. Pair each long-term goal with a ritual that makes it real in the next hour, so your future is not just a promise, but a practice. The present is a tool, not a tyrant. Use it deliberately to build stones into stairs, and forgive yourself for the times you've lived with your nose against the glass. Everyone starts in the valley. The climb is not a single heroic act, but 1,000 small corrections upward. One less impulse honored, one more consequence considered, one less argument entered, one more priority protected. You will slip. You will chase a flare. You will mistake a ping for a purpose. Notice it, smile at your own humanity, and step back up. Pause now and look at a decision on your table. Close your eyes and fly it to the summit. What do you see from there? 3 months, 3 years ahead? Who are you if you keep choosing this way? What opens? What closes? Let those answers guide you down the mountain to the next right step. The present will still shimmer and shout, but you will meet it with a steadier gaze, a longer memory, and a future that recognizes you when you arrive. Law 7, the Law of Defensiveness. Soften people's resistance by confirming their self-opinion. We do not defend the truth as fiercely as we defend the story that lets us live with ourselves. That is the quiet engine behind most arguments and most failed persuasion. We push facts at people whose armor is built from identity, and then we wonder why the facts bounce. If you have ever felt baffled that reason didn't work, this is the doorway you were missing. People are not fortresses you batter down. They are gardens that open when you prove you won't trample what they love about themselves. The quickest way to close a mind is to threaten its self-opinion. The quickest way to open it is to see that opinion, honor it, and invite it to cooperate with you. Everyone carries a private creed, a trio of convictions that keeps the self intact. I am autonomous. I act of my own will. I am intelligent in my own way. I am no fool. I am decent at heart. I mean well. Touch those nerves with a careless hand and the shutters slam. Even the mild become stubborn. Even the curious become combative. Even the warm become cold. You have felt this inside yourself. When someone corners you with pressure, you resist not because their idea is wrong, but because the pressure says you're weak. When someone talks to you as if you're gullible, you defend not because their facts are false, but because their tone says you can't think. When someone suggests your motives are dark, you fight not because your behavior is flawless, but because you cannot live with the label. If you want influence that lasts, start here. Never put people in a position where agreement means self-betrayal. Let them keep their face. Better still, let them leave the room with more face than they had when they entered. That begins with how you listen. Most of us listen to reply. Persuasive people listen to learn. Treat each person as an undiscovered country. Notice the topics that light their eyes and the ones that tighten their jaw. Follow the small shifts in posture and breath that tell you where pride lives and where pain sits. Ask the kind of questions that let them tell their own story with dignity. When you listen like this, you gather more than information. You gather the language of the other person's world, and when you reply in that language, when your words sound like something they might have said to themselves, you lower the drawbridge without force. People walk toward themselves. Give them a version of the future that feels like an extension of who they already believe they are. Moods are contagious, and yours will set the weather. If you want someone to relax their guard, arrive already relaxed. If you want warmth, carry it in. A calm tone, a slower pace, an unhurried face, these are not theatrics. They are signals to the nervous system that this is not a test they will fail or a courtroom where they must prosecute themselves. Think of your first minutes with someone as preparing the room. Match their tempo, then guide it gently lower. Small agreements early, the shared fact, the accurate reflection, the fair compliment, begin to align you on the same side of the table, looking at the problem together instead of at each other as the problem. Then, without fanfare, confirm what they need to believe to feel whole. If autonomy is their flag, give them the reins. Offer options, not orders. Frame your suggestion as a path they found. Let them choose the pace in the first step. If intelligence is their pride, let them teach you something. Concede a point that is truly theirs. Fold their language into your proposal so its structure carries their fingerprints. If decency is their anchor, link your request to a purpose bigger than both of you. Remind them of a time they helped and why it mattered. Let the action you're proposing be a chance for them to be who they say they are. This is not manipulation. It is respect for the psychological reality that people move fastest when movement protects their identity instead of threatening it. We all have soft spots that make us bristle. If someone's insecurity is status, don't casually compare them to those above them. If it's competence, don't lead with corrections. If it's belonging, don't joke about exclusion. You are not walking on eggshells. You are walking with care across the bridge you hope they'll cross towards you. Offer targeted praise where it's earned. Precision, not flattery. Name the strength before you invite growth. You'll feel the shoulders drop, the breath deepen, and the mind reopen to possibilities that were just off the table. Some people resist as a sport. Their self-image is built on pushing back. With them, force multiplies force. Use their own momentum instead. Mirror their language and frame your idea as a proof of their stance. Because you're the kind of person who hates being boxed in, I thought you might like this option that keeps things flexible. For the proudly contrarian, offer the conclusion and let them argue their way into it. Ask what you might be missing, then leave space long enough for them to fill it with the very reasons your plan works. Reverse psychology is not a trick when it is honest. It is an invitation to let their stubbornness do the heavy lifting in your direction. The royal road to influence is to put the spotlight on others. Let them talk more. Let their expertise steer you where it can. Let their values set the stage. If you are the most impressive person in the room, you might win applause and lose the outcome. If they leave feeling smarter, freer, and kinder because of the time with you, they will keep taking your calls. They will also carry your ideas as their own, which is the only way ideas survive outside the room. To do this cleanly, you need a mind that doesn't calcify around its first draft. As the body tightens with age, so does the mind, and persuasion dies where rigidity begins. Keep a child's flexibility with an adult's reason. Treat your opinions like building blocks. Assemble them, test them, knock down what wobbles, rebuild what holds. Play. Curiosity keeps you from becoming the brittle preacher who needs to be right more than helpful. And it makes you far more persuasive because people feel safer around someone whose ego isn't stretched tight over every point. There is one more layer, and it is the hardest. Your own self-opinion is not as pure as you'd like to believe. You are more influenced by signals than you admit. You accept group ideas when you're tired. You can be manipulated by urgency, flattery, fear. If you forget this, you'll talk to others from a pedestal they'll want to knock down. If you remember it, you'll approach them with humility. And humility is a solvent for resistance. Create a little distance between your feelings and your conclusions. Notice when you dig in because your identity is threatened, not because your logic is sound. Step back, breathe, and choose the answer that keeps you honest tomorrow, not just triumphant today. Tonight, think of a conversation that turned into a tug of war. Rewind it and ask where you threaten the other person's self-image without meaning to. Imagine one sentence you could have used that would have protected their autonomy, or honored their intelligence, or respected their decency. Then carry that sentence into your next hard talk. Arrive with a calmer mood. Listen until you can say their position better than they can and watch what happens to the air between you. You will still disagree sometime. You will still say no, but the no will land on softer ground and the yes will come more often without force. Influence at its best is not conquest. It is choreography. Two people moving toward a shared result because each feels more like themselves in the dance. Law 8, the Law of Self-Sabotage. Change your circumstances by changing your attitude. You don't live in the world as it is. You live in the world as your attitude allows you to see it. The mind is not a camera, it's a projector. If you expect betrayal, you will notice only the cracks. If you expect growth, you will notice only the doors. The paradox is simple and ruthless. The attitude you bring to life quietly builds the life you end up living. Change the lens and the landscape rearranges itself. Think of your attitude as the weather inside your chest. On some days, the sky is low and heavy. You read small slights as big threats. You brace at every sound. You take no risks because failure feels like doom. On other days, the air is wide and clean. Ideas move, people seem less dangerous, and you can try, adjust, learn, try again. The external facts may be the same, the results are not. If fear is your filter, you'll avoid the very paths that would have taught you how to succeed, then call your avoidance proof that success is not for you. If curiosity is your filter, you'll enter rooms you're not yet worthy of. Stay long enough to become worthy, and call that luck. Attitude is not decoration, it is a steering wheel. Start with the quiet truth that your mind is always interpreting. A comment arrives, a delay happens, a plan slips. The event itself is narrow, but your interpretation pours color into it. A hostile attitude will paint the day in alarms. When you walk into a room already convinced the world is against you, you will misread neutral faces as enemies, and your defensive tone will produce the very friction you fear. Reverse this with a deliberate experiment. Greet new people with the sentence, "I like this person," whispered only to yourself. Then behave as if it were true. Your body will loosen, your voice will warm, and something small but real will change in them. You are not lying to yourself. You are choosing a frame that gives the moment oxygen. An anxious attitude shrinks life to a series of emergency procedures. You try to manage outcomes by micromanaging details, and the more you grip the small, the more the big escapes. Respect your vigilance. It's energy, but point it at craft instead of control. Pour it into the work in front of you. A cleaner draft, a tighter process, a clearer brief. Perfectionism is an insult to growth because it forbids the ugly middle where mastery is made. Trade perfection for precision and watch your shoulders drop. Progress happens in public, not in fantasy. The avoidant attitude tells a quieter lie. If you never take responsibility, you can never be judged. You say you're not ready, that your idea needs more time, that the idea will be kinder. Later rarely arrives. Shrink the fear by shrinking the task. Choose something small, useful, completable, one page, one pitch, one call, and finish it completely. Completion is a muscle. Each small finish is a vote for a self who can be trusted, and the votes add up. A depressive attitude carries the heavy story, "I am unworthy." It turns attention inward and sharpens the eye for darkness in others so it won't have to face the darkness within. If this is your undertow, treat your mood as weather, not identity. Don't deny it, direct it. Put the heaviness to work in art, in rehab, in the crafts that require patience and honest feeling. Seek small, embodied wins. Walk sunlight tasked with edges, and let them compound. Steer your days toward experiences that confirm your capacity, not your stuckness. You cannot think yourself into worthiness. You can only act yourself there. The resentful attitude converts old pain into a permanent lens. It collects injustices like trophies and turns the past into a weapon against the present. The problem with grudges is that they chain you to the very people and moments you hate. When you carry them, they carry you. Letting go is not absolution, it is evacuation. Name the wound, take from it the lesson you can use, extract your attention, and walk. If your circle feeds your resentment with constant outrage, find a calmer table. Your mind becomes the conversation it hears most. All of these constricted attitudes share one feature. They narrow your field of view to keep you feeling safe. Safety without movement is a soft prison. The alternative is not naive positivity. It is an expansive attitude that widens the field without losing realism. Be an explorer of ideas. Try beliefs on the way you try jackets. Keep what fits, return what restricts. Leave certainty behind long enough to see what else might be true. When adversity arrives, and it will treat it as a test of response rather than a verdict on identity. You cannot always choose the pain, but you can choose the posture you meet it with. That choice is not poetry, it's biology. Bodies that expect recovery recover faster. Bodies that expect collapse conserve nothing and heal slow. Your interpretation speaks to your cells. This is not a call to stop taking things seriously. It's a call to stop taking them personally. Most people are protecting their own fear, defending their own self-opinion, negotiating with their own ghosts. Their bad mood is not a prophecy about you. Their hurry is not an insult to you. Their refusal is not a definition of you. When you remove the me from every moment, the moment gets easier to work with. You can still negotiate hard, set boundaries cleanly, and walk away when you must. Only now you do it from steadiness, not from a shaking ego. To change your attitude, give yourself better inputs and better rituals. Curate what you consume. If your feed trains you to expect catastrophe by the hour, your nervous system will live in sirens. Replace some of the noise with sources that prize context over panic. Design a morning that chooses your focus before the world chooses it for you. Keep promises to yourself so your self-respect rises from action, not affirmation. Practice one micro-reframe each day. When you catch a fearful thought, add a "for now" to the end of it. When you catch a hopeless one, add "unless I try." These are small hinges. They move big doors. Notice, too, the company you keep. Perpetually short-sighted people will sell you urgency and buy your attention with it. Spend more time with builders, those who plan quarters and years, who value patience, who measure progress by what they finish. Borrow their cadence. It will feel slow at first, then powerful. In their presence, you will find yourself less reactive, more deliberate, and strangely less interested in dramas that used to hook you. Above all, cultivate the habit of asking better questions. When something goes wrong, replace a "why is this happening to me?" with a "what is this asking of me?" Replace "what if I fail?" with a "what will I learn that I can't learn any other way?" Replace "what will they think?" with a "who do I become if I choose this?" Attitude is a string of questions you ask without noticing. Make them better on purpose. None of this requires a personality transplant. It requires a series of small, repeatable moves that tilt your story in a new direction. One generous assumption about a stranger. One completed task before you feel ready. One breath before you respond. One grudge set down because it is too expensive to carry. 1 hour protected for the work that feeds the future you want. The world outside you will not rearrange overnight. The world inside you can begin to today. Before you sleep, look back at the last decision you delayed, the last conflict that flared, the last opportunity you waved away. If you could replay it with a different attitude, less hostile, less anxious, less avoidant, less depressive, less resentful, what single action would have changed the arc? Choose that action for tomorrow. Write it somewhere your morning eyes can't ignore. Then live it once. Your attitude is not a slogan. It is a practice. And the life you long for is not a miracle. It is the natural consequence of practicing that attitude until the world you see is big enough to hold the person you are becoming. Law 9. The Law of Repression. Confront your dark side. You are not only the things you admire about yourself, you are also the parts you avoid in mirrors, the envy you dress as principle, the anger you rename honesty, the hunger you hide behind discipline. The paradox is cruel and liberating at once. The more you deny your darkness, the more it steers you. The moment you face it, its grip loosens and your life begins to feel like yours again. Carl Jung called this buried territory the shadow, a storehouse of our selfishness, aggression, cravings, and shame. It is not evil by default. It is power without light, and power without light will leak. It leaks in stress, in alcohol, in moments when the social mask slips and the old animal inside us breathes. As we get older and the pressure of pretending grows, the leaks widen. You've seen it in others, and if you're honest, you've felt it in yourself. The shadow announces itself in small contradictions. The person who preaches restraint and keeps breaking their own rules. The voice that condemns a desire with such heat that you can hear the longing behind it. The outburst that explodes over a minor slight because the minor slight bumped a major wound. The saint who needs an enemy to prove their sainthood, and so they use a good cause to license bad behavior. The charmer who smiles as they delay, then bleeds resentment into gossip the moment you leave the room. The rationalist who mocks emotion while being led by it, rigid in the name of reason, terrified of anything messy or human. The snob who despises mediocrity because they fear their own ordinary. The entrepreneur who screams independence but aches to be carried. None of this means people are hollow or monstrous. It means they are human and unintegrated, half-lit and therefore unpredictable. What we repress doesn't die, it looks for vents. You too develop masks to keep your life moving. You got tougher than you really were because softness once cost you. You polished kindness because power once hurt you. You became a fanatic for certainty when uncertainty once humiliated you. These defenses worked when you were smaller. Now they run you when you could be steering them. The tough shell that kept you safe can make intimacy impossible. The saintly polish that won you approval can turn into quiet cruelty toward anyone who breaks your script. The clever charm that saved you from conflict can rot into passive aggression that poisons trust. We all have favorite disguises, but the trouble is not that we wear them. It's that we forget there's a face beneath. Repression is a short-term trick with long-term costs. Think of a beach ball held underwater. For a while your arms are strong enough. Your smile is convincing. The surface looks calm. But your attention narrows, your muscles burn, and the ball is still a sphere of air that wants the sky. The moment your focus slips, it rockets up, faster, messier, louder than if you had let it bob beside you. and learned how to swim with it in sight. This is how the shadow returns, as projection when you can't stand a trait in yourself, so you find it everywhere in others, as accident when you didn't mean to say the thing your body has been rehearsing for months, as over-idealization when you use pure language to justify impure impulses. It is better to meet the ball at the surface than get hit in the face when it erupts. So begin with a gentler courage. See the shadow. Notice what makes you instantly defensive, what jokes land too sharp, what compliments you cannot fully accept, what successes in others you find yourself explaining away. Pay attention to the topics that compress your breath and the names that tighten your jaw. Those are doorways. Not accusations, doorways. Stand in front of one and say the quiet sentence you've been avoiding. I want to be admired more than I admit. I am angrier than I show. I need control because I fear being unseen. The words won't kill you. They will open a window, and in that fresh air the feeling changes shape. Shame thrives in locked rooms. It weakens in the daylight of precise language. Next, embrace the shadow. That does not mean acting out every impulse. It means owning the energy, so you can choose where it goes. You are allowed to be ambitious without pretending your drive is only service. You are allowed to enjoy power without claiming you never touch it. You are allowed to be sexual without making every room an audition. You are allowed to be afraid without turning fear into contempt for those who risk. When you hold a part of yourself and say mine, you stop asking the world to carry it for you. The people around you will feel that shift. You become easier to trust because you are less busy performing virtue and more available for reality. Then explore the shadow. Give its force a channel and watch what happens. Anger, directed cleanly, becomes boundary and courage. Envy, examined honestly, becomes a map of the skills you secretly want to develop. Pride, moderated, becomes the backbone that lets you take a hit and keep your word. Even the urge to dominate can be sublimated into mastering your craft instead of controlling people. Make something with the heat: music, code, a business, a training plan, a difficult conversation, so the heat makes a life rather than scorching one. This is not spiritual decoration, it is practical engineering. Energy unused floods the basement. Energy employed lights the house. At last, show some of it. Not the costume of darkness to impress strangers. Not confession as performance, but calibrated truth in rooms that can hold it. Tell a partner, I have a competitive streak that can get ugly. Help me catch it. Tell a colleague, I get rigid when timelines slip. I'm working on response instead of control. Tell a friend, a praise is hard for me. When I deflect it, remind me to say thank you. Each sentence builds a bridge between who you are and how you act. People sense the difference between someone who pretends at goodness and someone who wrestles toward it. The second kind is compelling. Their presence relaxes a room. They do not need to make others small to feel big. They can offend when bad faith demands a boundary, and they can forgive when misunderstanding asks for grace. You will be tempted in moments of progress to declare victory and go blind again. Resist that. Integration is not a switch. It is a relationship with yourself that matures. You will regress. An old trigger will yank you back. You will hear your own voice moralize with too much heat, and you'll know the shadow is hungry. That is not failure. It is a reminder to return to the work. Name, own, channel, reveal. It gets easier, not because the darkness vanishes, but because you learn its habits and your own. If you need one test for the road, use this. Are your actions and your explanations starting to match? Hypocrisy shrinks as integration grows. The person who once preached temperance and drank their rage now says, I'm angry today, takes a walk, and returns with a calmer spine. The person who once mocked romance to hide longing now says, I want to be chosen, and chooses differently in love. The person who once hid behind intelligence to avoid feeling now says, I'm scared, and continues anyway. Small statements, big lives. Tonight, before you sleep, bring to mind the last time you overreacted. Rewind the film until you reach the moment right before the jump. What did you protect? What did you refuse to admit? What would have happened if you had named it? Write one line you could use next time. A line that exposes the shadow without humiliating you. Put it where your morning eyes will find it. The shadow does not end when you see it. It ends when you can look at it without flinching, tell the truth about it without theater, and give it a job that builds rather than breaks. Do that long enough, and you will feel a surprising softness move through your life. People will trust you more. Your work will carry voltage without smoke, and you will walk with the quiet authority of someone who no longer has to hide to be good. Law 10. The Law of Envy. Beware the fragile ego. Every time a friend succeeds, I die a little. Gore Vidal wasn't celebrating pettiness. He was telling a quiet truth we'd rather not admit. Envy is the emotion we deny the most and feel the most. It lives in the gap between who we are and who we wish we were, and it whispers whenever someone else's victory makes our own life feel smaller. The paradox is harsh and useful. The more you pretend you never feel envy, the more it owns you. The more you recognize it, first in yourself, then in others, the freer and kinder you become. To see envy clearly is to become a student of human nature, because envy never walks in with its real name. It arrives as a joke with an edge, a compliment that stings, a story told just out of your earshot, an oddly strained "I'm happy for you." If you learn to hear those notes without hatred or naivety, you'll protect your work, your peace, and your relationships. Begin with your own eyes. Envy is a mirror before it is a diagnosis. Notice the small deaths that happen in you when someone close wins, how your chest tightens, how you rush to find a flaw in their path, how you explain their luck so you don't have to face your delays. You are not a villain for feeling this. You are human. If you meet the feeling honestly, it changes shape. Envy owned becomes a map. It points straight at a quality you want to develop or a road you have refused to travel. Ask yourself, what exactly in their success hooked me? The craft, the courage, the consistency, the network, the timing, name it. Then do the unglamorous thing envy hates most. Turn the spotlight back onto your work and put in deliberate practice. Unowned envy rots into bitterness. Owned envy turns into a staircase. Once you've cleaned your lens, look outward. The subtlest signs of envy live in faces and voices. The eyes go flat for a heartbeat when you share good news. The smile is there, but the upper face refuses to join. The congratulations have a tightness in the throat, a speed that rushes to change the subject. Tell the same person a small misfortune and watch, just for a flicker, the light that shouldn't be there. This is not permission to hate them. It is information about proximity and access. The people closest to you, colleagues who share your lane, friends who share your history, have the most data and the most to compare. They know your soft spots in their own, and that makes the emotional math volatile. Take note. Adjust your boundaries and stop pitching your dreams to auditors who will only discount them. Envy often dresses up as praise. You'll hear a "must be nice" said with a smile that isn't. Only you could pull that off, padded with a detail that undermines the win. Love your talk. I mean, it was a bit simplistic, but people need that. Poisonous praise confuses because it mixes warmth and sting in the same sentence. You leave the moment doubting your read in yourself. That confusion is the goal. Step back, breathe, and translate the message. Your rise makes me feel small. I'm trying to make the air safer for me. You don't have to argue with that. You do have to protect your momentum. Keep your plans out of that mouth. Keep your spirit out of that theater. Gossip is envy's long-distance weapon. When a negative story about you begins to circulate, especially one that subtly attacks the very thing you're proud of, assume envy is at least part of the fuel. Respond sparingly and only with facts, then get back to building. The most efficient reputation machine is finished work and consistent character. Let time do the arguing. Be careful, too, with the friend who pulls you close and then tugs you back. Warm one week, undermining the next. Intimate until your good news arrives. Push-pull is a common pattern. Intimacy used as leverage, your openness turned into ammunition. Set the distance that keeps you generous without being a target. You'll meet familiar types on this road. There is the leveler, always alert to injustice, allergic to excellence, a master at making you feel guilty for wanting more. There is the self-entitled slacker, big on potential, light on follow-through, ready to claim your progress as proof that the system is rigged. There is the status fiend, hungry for rank, asking what you make and where you live while pretending to disdain luxury. There is the attacher drawn to your energy, playing helper or partner while resenting your gravity, hoping your shine will rub off without the hours you paid. And there is the insecure master, higher up the ladder, smiling as they quietly block your steps, threatened by a talent they should have nurtured. You cannot save these patterns by explaining yourself. You can see them early, lower your exposure, keep the relationship strictly professional if it must exist, and pour your best into people who can celebrate without needing you small. Some seasons make envy louder for everyone. Aging can do it. Watching a younger cohort step into a world that moved since you last sprinted hurts. Certain institutions, tight teams, neighborhoods, industries that fetishize lists, concentrate comparison. Social media is a low hum of a look at my life, and even strong minds catch the fever when tired. Women who rise often face a special edge of envy. The air around them grows crowded with judgments. Too ambitious, too soft, too visible, too quiet, and the safest counter is excellence paired with humility, clarity paired with credit shared. Nobody escapes the climate completely. You can, however, choose your altitude by choosing what you feed your mind and where you spend your attention. The cleanest antidotes to envy look simple and feel radical. Move closer to what you envy in a spirit of apprenticeship rather than competition. Ask for the book list, take the class, study the tape. Admire greatness as if it were a public good, because it is. When admiration replaces comparison, your nervous system relaxes and your curiosity wakes up. Practice downward comparison is medicine for a mind stuck on scarcity. Not to gloat, never to gloat, but to restore proportion and gratitude. Your problems, real as they are not the only story on earth. Gratitude doesn't erase hunger. It steadies the hand that feeds it. And learn a German word that should be in every toolkit. Mitfreud, enjoying with. Train yourself to feel actual pleasure at someone else's win. Start small if you need to. Say the sentence out loud, and may their success expand what's possible for all of us. Your brain will resist at first. Keep going. You are rewiring rivalry into resonance. There's a strategic layer, too. Under-announce and over-deliver. Let results carry the signal instead of constant broadcast. When sharing wins, package them as lessons learned and value created, not personal coronation. In negotiations or rooms where status games run hot, downplay the triggers that hook small egos and emphasize the shared mission. Redirect credit generously in public and keep detailed receipts in private. Choose allies who can hold another person's light without needing it dimmed. Decline invitations to envy-fueled drama. You preserve energy every time you let a petty fight pass like weather. And remember, sometimes you will be the envier's subject. Sometimes you will be the envier. Both roles teach. When the pang hits, pause. Instead of building a case against the person, build a plan for yourself. Ask what one deliberate practice, done daily for a year, would leave you with nothing left to envy about this domain. Then do the first quiet rep. When someone envies you, don't gloat and don't grovel. Lower your profile where it's wise, raise your standards everywhere, and keep moving. The goal is not to be untouchable. It is to be unhookable. Before sleep tonight, try a brief inventory. Think of one person whose success needles you. Name precisely what they have that you want. Reduce the feeling to a task, a habit, a skill you can train. Then think of one person whose win you can celebrate without strain. Send them a short note that costs you nothing and buys you a stronger self. Finally, look at your closest circle. Who leaves you smaller after good news? Who grows when you grow? Adjust your distance by those answers. Envy will keep visiting. It is part of being human, but it doesn't have to run your house. When you meet it with honesty, gratitude, and a longer view, it becomes what it always wanted to be. A signal that points you back to your work, your values, and a life big enough to applaud others without shrinking yourself. Law 11, the Law of Grandiosity. Know your limits. A little sunlight warms. Too much blinds. That is the quiet law behind every rise and crash. The moment you start believing you are larger than the forces that made you, those forces come back to collect. The gods are merciless with those who fly too high on the wings of grandiosity, and the bill is always expensive. You have felt the early tug of it, the thrill of a small win, the flattering echo of praise, the story your mind starts writing in which you are more inevitable than you are. It's not evil, it's human. The task is not to kill your hunger, but to keep it tethered to reality, so it can pull you forward without dragging you over a cliff. Grandiosity begins as a distortion of proportion. You forget how many hands steadied the ladder, how much luck bent in your favor, how many mistakes you were allowed to make in private. You edit the story so that the wind looks like your lungs. Our era makes the editing easier. Many of us were cushioned early, praised early, protected early. Respect for authority declined, which freed imagination, but also dissolved the old frictions that once taught modesty, and the screens in our pockets converted tension into seeming destiny. More than anything, it is social media that spreads the grandiosity virus, a never-ending mirror that shows the outline of a crown and asks if you want to try it on. The answer is not always no. The answer must be only if it fits. You can see the costume most clearly on leaders who let the illusion set like plaster. They begin to speak in inevitabilities, as if greatness were their destiny by birthright, as if the world had been waiting for them and finally caught up. Then, to blunt the loneliness of height, they pretend to be the common man or woman, borrowing the language of the crowd as a disguise that reassures and manipulates. Soon the savior mask appears. Follow me and I will rescue you, which feels generous while it concentrates power. Then comes the itch to rewrite the rules, not from wisdom, but from boredom with limits. The belief that everything they touch turns to gold, so due diligence becomes an insult. And finally, the glow of invulnerability, a reckless romance with risk because risk makes fame louder. None of this is leadership. It is theater with real budgets and real casualties. It collapses not because fate is cruel, but because reality enforces its own math. If you recognize shadows of that story in yourself, do not panic or pretend. Grandiosity is a primal energy, and properly harnessed it becomes drive, daring, vision, stamina. The first move is honesty without humiliation. Admit the outsized desires you carry, the scale of impact you want, the recognition you crave, the work that would stretch you to your full height. Naming this hunger will not inflate you, it will anchor you. When you deny it, it leaks into performance and posturing. When you own it, you can point it. Then focus the beam. Scatterbrain thinking is the favorite food of grandiosity. It lets you nibble at 10 dreams and finish none, while calling the nibbling ambition. Choose one project worthy of your best energy and slice it into steps a sane person could complete. Small, honest completions are a form of spiritual hygiene. Each one turns heat into traction. Each one builds the quiet pride that needs less applause to breathe. Your energy is a wild animal. It needs to roam free now and then, or it will go mad from restlessness. But roaming is not stampeding. Give it challenges just beyond your current skill level, heavy enough to demand your attention, light enough that progress is possible. That is how muscle grows and character with it. Reality is not your enemy. Treat it like a feedback loop between imagination and facts. Dream in private with no ceiling. Test in public with data and dissent. Seek out the critic who is not a hater, the person unimpressed by your glitter and invested in your growth. Ask them where your story is running ahead of your substance. It will sting. Let it. Sting as information. Surround yourself with people who are skilled enough to contradict you and brave enough to do it. If everyone around you agrees too quickly, you are either already a genius or already in danger. The odds favor danger. Learn the discipline of credit. Say out loud who helped, who caught the error, who stayed late, who lent you their reputational capital when you had none. This is not false humility. It is accurate accounting. It keeps your internal narrative synchronized with the observable world so that the gap does not widen into delusion. It also makes other people want to help you again, which is not a bad definition of sustainable power. Work harder than your myth. Lead from the front when it costs something, not only when cameras are near. If you miss, own the miss cleanly. If you win, let the win speak before you do. Hold a long view while you move in small daily increments. Real achievement is less like a rocket and more like a cathedral. Years of stone on stone, many hands, no single moment that finishes it, no single person who can claim it whole. This posture does not dim your light. It prevents glare. Watch for the seductions that signal drift. If you start calling your hunches laws, slow down. If you start mistaking followers for friends, get quiet. If you find yourself bored by the rules that protect the people you lead, step back until you remember what they are for. If a risky move excites you mainly because it will make noise, wait until it also makes sense. Grandiosity wants spectacle. Greatness wants standards. Protect the parts of you that keep you human. Schedule boredom so the nervous system can reset. Keep a private practice where you are not famous. Music nobody hears. Long runs with no numbers. Learning a skill where you're a beginner again. Let gratitude become a ritual rather than an occasional mood. Nothing punctures inflation like the sentence "thank you" sincerely delivered repeatedly to specific people for specific things. And keep one person in your life who remembers you before you were interesting. Let them tease you and listen. There is a gentler layer to this law that matters as much as the guardrails, Ambition that denies its own height grows mean. Ambition that honors its limits grows kind. When you treat your success as a stewardship rather than a coronation, you become easier to follow and harder to corrupt. You stop hoarding the stage and start building the stage. You hire people who might outgrow you and you help them do it. You become suspicious of any move that makes you larger and the work smaller. And when praise arrives, and it will, you let it pass through you like weather, pleasant, not defining. At the end of a long day, ask yourself 3 questions that keep the wings from melting. What did reality teach me today that I didn't want to hear? Where did I trade effort for image, and how will I reverse it tomorrow? Who helped me carry this, and how will I make that help visible? Write 1 sentence you will use when the inner trumpet gets too loud. Something simple like, slow down, seek proof, or show your steps, share the credit. Tape it where your morning eyes can't avoid it. The point is not to shame yourself. The point is to be the kind of ambitious person whose ambition doesn't eat them. You do not need to shrink to be safe. You need to be measured to be lasting. Let your vision be grand and your steps be grounded. Let your appetite be large and your story be accurate. Fly as high as your craft, your team, and your character can support, and no higher. If you do, the gods have nothing to punish. They might even look up, nod once, and let you pass, visible from below, steady in the air, not a meteor that dazzles and disappears, but a traveler who arrives. Law 12, the law of gender rigidity. Reconnect to the masculine or feminine within you. You were born wide. Before the world taught you how to move and what to mute, you carried both edges of human energy, tenderness and drive, receptivity and initiative, care and conquest. Then the lessons arrived. Be this, not that. Speak like this, not like that. Toughen up. Calm down. Don't want too much. Don't feel too deeply. To fit, you picked a lane. To be safe, you wore a mask. And somewhere along the way, parts of you went quiet. The paradox is that you can win applause by playing the role, but you cannot feel whole until you let the exiled qualities come home. Do not be afraid to bring out the more sensitive or ambitious sides of your character. These repressed parts, what Jung called the anima and the animus, are not enemies. They are missing instruments in your orchestra, and your life is asking for their sound. Jung's language is simple and useful. In a man, the anima is the unexpressed feminine, his capacity to receive, to listen without fixing, to nurture, to feel and name feeling without shame. In a woman, the animus is the unexpressed masculine, her capacity to initiate, to draw boundary without apology, to direct, to carry a plan into the world with clean force. None of this is a prison of stereotypes. It is a map of human potentials. When either side is buried, it does not die. It goes underground and looks for the light through projection. We meet a person whose face seems to glow with everything we have refused ourselves, and we call it destiny. The chemistry feels like revelation. The story feels like fate. But often what we are seeing is not the person in front of us. It is the silhouette of the unlived life inside of us, cast onto them by longing. This is why some romances feel like rescue missions and end like trials. A woman who learned that father's attention was a rare son can orbit older, powerful men and measure her worth by their gaze, trapped in the need for constant reassurance. A man who grew up starved for maternal steadiness can chase the fantasy of a flawless woman, searching for a shelter that no adult can provide, disappointed by humanity, where he demanded divinity. A daughter who swallowed her rebellion under a strict patriarch may find herself drawn to men who throw rocks at every authority, as if dating defiance could heal what parenting did not. A son who felt dwarfed by a strong, engulfing mother can seek the thrill of the forbidden as proof he is free, confusing pain with power and surrender with love. A woman who is taught she is smaller can reach for men who fill the room, hoping proximity to thunder will make her lightning, only to find herself managed. A man adored by a mother who made him her son can hunt for a partner to keep the devotion uninterrupted, mistaking worship for warmth. These patterns are not indictments, they are mirrors. When you can see the story, you can stop reenacting it. The work is gentle and brave. Begin by telling yourself the truth about the qualities you have trimmed to fit expectations. If you learn to armor, do you still believe softness is a liability, or are you ready to test it as a strength? If you learn to be accommodating, do you still believe ambition will cost you love, or can you hold your own desires without apology? You do not need to announce a new identity. You need to practice neglected motions until they feel native again. A man can sit with sadness and let it speak in full sentences without rushing to fix the room. A woman can make the first ask, set the first term, and refuse to translate every decisive moment into guilt. You can be both hospitable and hard to move, both warm and unbribable. The balance is not a pose, it is a return. Notice how projection sneaks into your praise and your anger. When someone fascinates you, pause and ask, what quality in them is actually the part of me I've been starving? If it is their calm, practice yours rather than trying to steal theirs. If it is their drive, expand yours rather than renting their momentum. And when someone repels you, ask the harder version. Are they pressing a bruise that belongs to me? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes harm is simply harm. But often the heat of your reaction is the outline of an unfinished conversation with your own past. Treat it as an invitation, not a sentence. The person who has worn toughness like a second skin can choose one conversation a day to lead with curiosity before control, one evening a week to rest without performance, one apology offered cleanly without self-erasure. The person who has been trained to be pleasing can choose one negotiation a day to enter with her number on the table, one boundary drawn without footnotes, one decision taken without a committee in her head. If you have equated love with caretaking, experiment with being cared for. Ask for help and do not shrink when it arrives. If you have equated dignity with dominance, experiment with collaboration, share direction, and do not fear the dilution of credit. These micro-acts seem small. They rewrite identity precisely because they are lived, not posted. There is a cost to rigidity that we pay in private. Men who amputate their sensitivity tend to call every feeling anger and every need a mission, then wonder why intimacy feels like loss. Women who amputate their assertiveness tend to call every desire an inconvenience and every victory an accident, then wonder why their lives feel curated by other hands. The remedy is not to swing wildly into caricature. It is to let the disowned qualities come back into proportion, so you stop asking partners to carry work that only your own honesty can do. When you own more of yourself, you demand less from others, and your love stops sounding like a job description. As you practice, expect the world to be confused too. People fell in love with your role. They may not applaud your reality at first. The colleagues who counted on your overfunctioning may test your new boundaries. The partners who fed on your approval may resent your calm no. The friends who enjoyed the endless performance may find your quiet unsettling. Stay kind, stay consistent, and let time introduce them to the person beneath the costume. The ones who love you will adapt. The ones who needed your mask will drift. Both outcomes leave you truer. Do not play the expected gender role. Create the one that suits you. That does not mean rejecting tradition just to prove you can. It means choosing from the human palette on the basis of usefulness and truth. If cooking grounds you, cook. If building wakes you, build. If raising children is your craft, practice it with the rigor and joy of any master. If leading teams is your oxygen, lead with a spine that doesn't need to steal anyone else's air. Let your values, not the air as costume, decide your acts. There is an older self inside you that remembers how to be wide. As children, our sense of self was fluid. We could move from sword fights to tea parties without wondering who we were. Then approval narrowed us. Returning to that original person is not regression. It is maturation. The adult version of your childhood wholeness has discretion, courage, and a history of mistakes turned into wisdom. When you invite back what you exiled, you do not become less yourself. You become finally yourself, capable of a fuller range of love, work, and presence. Tonight, give yourself a simple living experiment. Think of one quality you admire that you have kept at arm's length. Name it. Find one action tomorrow that expresses it in a room where you feel safe. Do it once. Then notice the honest discomfort and do it again next week with the volume turned up one notch. At the same time, notice the person who fascinates you. Thank them silently for showing you your missing piece, and then go build that piece within. This is not a sprint to a new identity. It is a slow reunion. And as you practice, you will feel something delicate and powerful click into place. You are living the life that fits, carried by one voice that can be both tender and strong, receptive and resolute, finally wide enough to hold the human you always were. Law 13. The law of aimlessness. Advance with a sense of purpose. You can have talent, energy, and time, and still drift. The paradox is that motion can feel like meaning while your life quietly circles the same harbor. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, Nietzsche wrote, and you feel the truth of that line in your bones on the days when the wind turns cold. Purpose is not decoration. It is a spine. Without it, you bend to every mood in headline. With it, your days begin to align, like iron filings pulled toward a hidden magnet, and the scattered parts of you find their direction. Think of purpose as a current running beneath the surface of your life. When you are in it, work costs you less. You stop bargaining with yourself for every hour. Focus returns like a muscle you thought you'd lost, and distractions lose their glamour because they are simply off route. When you are out of it, everything is uphill. Small problems feel heavy, criticism hits like a verdict, success tastes flat, and rest does not restore you. A high sense of purpose multiplies your force, not because it makes you superhuman, but because it gathers your fragments into a single motion. The many sides of your character, curiosity, discipline, stubbornness, tenderness, stop fighting and start rowing the same way. To find this current, begin by looking backward with softer eyes. Before you learned to edit yourself for approval, there were moments that felt strangely natural, things you did not because you were told to, but because they lit you from within. Early fascinations are not childish, they are coordinates. Maybe it was building worlds out of scraps, asking too many questions, fixing broken devices, organizing small teams, telling stories that made the room go quiet. Do not search for a grand title. Look for the sensation of ease inside effort. Your calling is less what the world will call you, and more what you cannot help but do when you are most yourself. Name it plainly, and it will stop feeling mystical. The work of purpose is not to invent meaning from nothing, but to give honest shape to what has been quietly asking for your attention since the beginning. As you turn toward it, expect resistance from the world. Yes, but first from your own mind. The moment you commit, criticism arrives, some of it honest, much of it envy in costume. Treat the negative current as fuel, not by becoming spiteful, but by transmuting friction into focus. When someone doubts you, let it sharpen your questions rather than dull your ambition. What about their critique is signal? What is noise, and what, if anything, should I improve today because of it? This alchemy will keep you from the two easiest traps, quitting in a sulk or performing your purpose for applause. The first starves you, the second sells you. You will move faster if you walk with people who are already moving. Purpose is contagious. Spend real time near those who plan in years, who care about craft more than credit, who protect hours for deep work and come alive when they talk about what they are building. Their cadence will recalibrate yours. In their company, urgency becomes precision, not panic. Ambition becomes stewardship, not ego. And when you cannot change your circle quickly, change the gravity in your day. Start it with 1 hour that belongs only to the thing that matters. No notifications, no negotiations, just you facing the work that will make the rest of the hours make sense. Big purposes die from indigestion, not hunger. You do not need a new will. You need a better ladder. Take the long aim and break it into descending goals, each small enough to be completed and large enough to be meaningful. The human nervous system trusts repetition more than speeches. 1 page a day becomes a book. 1 prototype a week becomes a product. 1 outreach every morning becomes a network. Anxiety lives in blurry timelines. Confidence grows where the next step is obvious. Put the step on your calendar as if it were a meeting with someone you respect, because it is. Flow is not an accident. It is an appointment you keep with your attention. When you protect uninterrupted time, a different kind of intelligence wakes up. The slow, rich kind that connects ideas you didn't know were neighbors. In that state, effort feels like play and hours collapse into minutes. Make these windows sacred. You don't need many. What you need is to stop treating them as optional. The world will offer you a false purpose every 5 minutes. Your calendar is where you prove which purpose is real. Beware the cheap replacements. Pleasure is a fine guest and a terrible landlord. Overstimulation after shallow work is how you end up both wired and empty. Causes and cults can feel like purpose because they give you a crowd and a script. If you lose your voice inside them, they were a detour, not a direction. Money and status are good tools and bad gods. They can measure part of your impact, but they cannot tell you who you are. And attention, the democratized idol of our age, will keep you busy auditioning for strangers while your real work waits in the quiet room you keep avoiding. Nietzsche warned that a man would rather have the void as purpose than be void of purpose. Cynicism is just that, a void dressed as wisdom. Don't let it become your personality. It feels smart. It builds nothing. Purpose is not rigid. It evolves as you do. The trick is to hold the why steady while letting the how adapt. When a path closes, shift your method, not your meaning. When pain arrives, as it will, let the question be, how can this serve the work, rather than what does this say about me? People with a purpose do not suffer less. They suffer towards something. They draw maps from their mistakes. They tell cleaner stories about their setbacks. And because their story is bigger than today, they can bear a rough today without losing the thread. If you feel behind, you're on time. Aimlessness is not a moral failure, it is a directional problem. Start small and start now. Choose one act that points at your why and do it before the day can argue. Write the opening paragraph. Sketch the feature. Call the client. Learn the scale. Ship the draft. Not because it will change your life in an afternoon, but because it will change your afternoon. And enough changed afternoons become a life. Discipline is remembering what you want. You will still drift sometimes. On those days, don't panic. Pause and ask 3 gentle questions. What did the child in me love to do for its own sake? What does the adult in me know the world needs that I can actually offer? Where do those answers overlap today? Not in fantasy, but in the hours I can touch. Put the overlap on your calendar and protect it like oxygen. If you want a simple ceremony, write your why on a card and carry it. Look at it when you are tempted to trade it for noise. Let it embarrass your excuses. Let it calm you when fear begins to shout. Before you sleep tonight, rehearse tomorrow's first move toward your purpose with such clarity that your body can do it before your doubts wake up. Then close your eyes with a sentence as old as work. I know my why. The how will be learned in practice. The world outside you will still be loud. The world inside you will begin to align. And as your life gathers into a direction, you will find that the same hours you had before now carry more weight, more grace, and more quiet joy. Because you are no longer walking just to move. You are traveling to arrive. Law 14. The Law of Conformity. Resist the downward pull of the group. When people are free to do as they please, most don't create, most copy. Eric Hoffer's line cuts because it's true. Imitation feels like safety. The paradox is simple and dangerous. We join groups to feel stronger, and then, without noticing, we give the group the very strength we wanted for ourselves. Somewhere between wanting to belong and wanting to be, we start rehearsing a role, the social personality that smiles at the right jokes, wears the right mask, and nods along while the quieter self inside us grows faint. If you've ever left a room full of people and felt strangely tired and less sure of your own thoughts, you've met the pull. Tonight is about feeling it early, naming it clearly, and learning to keep your center while you move among others. It starts with tiny edits. You don't wake up and decide to become someone else. You shave the edges. You soften an opinion to avoid friction. Trade your shoes for the room's uniform. Echo a belief you haven't tested. The edits are small, the reward immediate. Heads nod, doors open. The group warms and your nervous system exhales, says, safe. But the bill is cumulative. The more often you bend to belong, the harder it gets to stand up without shaking. Belonging is a human need. Performance is a human trap. When we perform for acceptance long enough, we forget which voice was ours. Emotions move faster in groups than facts do. You felt this, the laughter that grows louder than the joke, the outrage that swells until it needs no evidence, the certainty that arrives not from proof but from proximity. This is emotional contagion, and it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Our brains were built to synchronize with the tribe because the tribe kept us alive. But the same wiring that saved your ancestors can waste your life if you never learn to interrupt it. You don't need to fight the room. You need to watch it the way a climber watches the weather. Ask yourself as the temperature rises, is this my feeling or the room's? If it's the room's, step half a pace back inside your mind and let the gust pass before you decide. Groups also create hypercertainty, that hot, quick push to decide now, commit now, declare now. There's a reason rallies work and mobs break things. Urgency narrows the frame until only one move looks possible. The safeguard is doubt, not the paralyzing kind, but the disciplined, healthy doubt that asks, what else could be true? The moment you can hold two possibilities in your head, the spell fades. Never give up your ability to doubt. It is the last light in a room where everybody's eyes reflect each other. Study the groups you orbit. Every group has a culture, traditions, myths, little rituals that say who we are. Every group has codes that no one wrote down and everyone enforces. Words you can't use, topics that tilt the table, postures that signal rank. There is a court around the alpha. Inside jokes is currency. Access is reward. Exile is warning. There is nearly always an enemy, a figure or idea to push against, a they that binds the we. And there are factions, quiet subgroups that compete for the story. None of this is evil. It's simply how humans herd. But seeing it lets you choose your distance, your speech, your stakes. If you're going to join with your eyes open. If you're going to lead with the humility that systems shape behavior as much as speeches do. The downward pull of the group is real, and you resist it not by becoming a hermit, but by building a spine. A person with a sense of purpose is harder to bend. When you know what you are moving toward, every room becomes a workshop, not a mirror. Your aim lets you absorb the parts of a culture that make you better, the discipline, the craft standards, the shared memory, and leave the parts that make you smaller, the cheap certainty, the borrowed outrage, the rituals that punish new thought. If a group cannot tolerate your honest curiosity, it is not a home. It is a costume department. If you find yourself leading people, you inherit a different responsibility to create a reality group in a world of echo chambers. That begins with a clear living purpose that everyone can repeat without rolling their eyes. A purpose isn't a poster, it's a filter. It decides which projects live, which meetings die, which metrics matter, and which applause you ignore. Then you choose lieutenants not for loyalty alone, but for competence and nerve, the kind of people who will tell you when your idea is crooked and can rally others when the weather turns. Give them real authority and let them carry the mission without having to carry your ego. Open the windows for ideas to move. Information that sticks to the top rots. Invite the quietest person in the room to speak first. Reward the note that saves a month, even if it stings today. Build a rhythm of open discussion where critique is a service, not a status game. Your mood will infect the group faster than your memos. Arrive steady. Radiate determination without drama. Resilience without bravado. People don't copy your words, they copy your nervous system. Small, real challenges reveal character more honestly than interviews do. A group that has solved hard problems together becomes harder to sway with easy temptations. Battle-tested does not mean burned out. It means calibrated. Proud for the right reasons. Bonded by earned trust. You do not have to renounce community to stay yourself. In fact, you need community to become your best self. People who aim at something real and lift you by expecting your best work, not your best imitation. Choose circles where you can disagree without being labeled, where doubt is a tool, not a sin, where you leave meetings with clearer plans than you brought in. If you cannot find such a circle, build one at the small scale you can sustain. 2 collaborators who prize truth over theater. A study group that argues cleanly. A team that treats data as oxygen. There will be moments when the crowd wants you louder, simpler, angrier. In those moments, remember the quiet contract you keep with yourself. You came to the group to multiply your capacity, not to divide your integrity. You can say less and still mean more. You can ask for a night to think and come back with a better answer. You can refuse to applaud what you don't respect and refuse to hate what you don't understand. You can walk away from rooms that need you dishonest to love you. Pause now and think about a group that shapes your days. A team, a friend circle, a digital tribe. What is its true purpose? What are the unwritten rules? Who is allowed to doubt? Who plays the court? Who is the enemy? Where does your voice change when you enter? You don't need to judge. You need to see. Then make one small adjustment that shifts you from performance to presence. Keep one opinion unedited and speak it gently. Step back from one surge of borrowed emotion. Ask one better question when certainty tries to rush you. If you lead, choose one move that makes the culture sturdier. Publish the purpose in plain language. Delegate one real decision. Start one meeting by asking for what could sink this plan. End one meeting by naming a win that strengthened the group's nerve. You will always belong to groups. That is not the problem. The problem is belonging so completely that you vanish. The goal is to move among people with your edges intact, to synchronize where it helps and hold your rhythm where it matters. In a world that rewards echoing, be the person who can hear the room and still hear themselves. You will find that the rooms you remain in grow better, and the ones you leave grow quieter. And you will walk out of gatherings not feeling smaller or louder, but clearer. Your mind a little freer, your purpose a little steadier, your steps your own again. Law 15. The Law of Fickleness. Make them want to follow you. The crowd loves a leader until it doesn't. One day you're a savior. The next day you're a suspect. This is not a flaw in them or a tragedy in you. It is human nature at work. People are ambivalent about power because power can bless or bruise, build or consume. The paradox is that leadership depends on trust, and trust is fickle. So real authority isn't a crown you wear. It's a relationship you earn, moment by moment, with people whose minds change like weather. Authority, as the old masters knew, is the delicate art of creating the appearance of power, legitimacy, and fairness, while getting people to identify with you as a leader who is in their service. That last phrase matters most, in their service. If you can make people feel safer, bigger, and more capable in your presence, they will follow you through fog. If you make them feel smaller or used, they will look for the first exit, even if they never say it out loud. The first step is to stop borrowing someone else's voice. Authority only sticks when it sounds like you. Some people lead by delivering relentlessly. They walk into chaos with a list and leave it cleaner than they found it. Others lead by founding, naming a thing that didn't exist, teaching people the language for it, then building the first version with their own hands. Some lead like artists. They carry a vision that most can't see yet, and they keep speaking it until the outline becomes a map. Some lead by healing, calming hot rooms, translating conflicts into solvable problems, inviting bruised egos to sit down and breathe. Some lead like teachers, patient, exact, relentless about clarity, unable to move on until you can do it yourself. If you chase an image of leadership you don't believe in, people will feel the wobble. They won't know why they hesitate. They'll just hesitate. Find your cadence and keep it honest. When your style fits your character, your presence becomes predictable in the right way, even if your moves are not. Then tilt your attention outward. Authority is not a spotlight, it is a mirror. The moment leadership becomes a costume for ego, everything curdles. See the role as a responsibility, not a throne. Walk into conversations expecting to listen twice as much as you speak. Let people finish. Let them be right when they are. Let them be seen even when they are wrong. When you make decisions, name the reasons and the trade-offs so that those affected can locate themselves in your thinking. It's not about performing empathy. It's about taking seriously the fact that people are giving you the time they won't get back. If they leave your meetings clearer and steadier than they arrived, you don't need to pound your chest. Your authority is doing its quiet work. Hold a vision that outlives the day. Most leaders drown in the hourly storm, the pings, the small fires, the theater of urgency. Cultivate a third eye that keeps watch on the horizon while your two hands work the present. What are you building that will still matter a year from now? What principles will you refuse to trade, even when it would be cheaper to cave? People can smell the difference between a manager of minutes and a keeper of meaning. If you keep your gaze long, you will make fewer enemies than you think and more allies than you can count, because you will stop making panicked moves that mortgage tomorrow for applause today. Calm is a form of competence. The room will borrow it from you when their own supply runs low. And lead from the front. Do not ask for sacrifices you won't make. Work harder than anyone when the stakes are real and the lights are off. Show your standards in your own habits. How you prepare, how you communicate, how you recover from mistakes. People forgive errors. They don't forgive hypocrisy. If you miss, you own it cleanly and publicly. If someone else hits, you highlight it without claiming credit by echo. Over time, this creates a culture where effort becomes contagious and excuses sound foreign. The paradox of standards is that they feel heavy at first and liberating later. Once people know where the bar is and see you carrying it first, they stop wasting energy guessing what will count. A leader must also play with the element everyone pretends not to notice: Mystery. If the group can file you too neatly under a single label, they will stop listening. Don't become unreadable. Become unpredictable within your values. Surprise the room by changing tempo, not direction. Sometimes you decide fast and let the team draft behind you. Other times you hold the decision and insist on one more round of objections. Sometimes you walk in with warmth. Sometimes you walk in with intensity. Sometimes you give people the answer. Sometimes you give them a framework and refuse to solve it for them. The goal is not to be cryptic. It is to remain alive. Categories are efficient, but they flatten human beings. When you keep a little of your depth to yourself, people lean in. When they lean in, they invest. When they invest, they follow. Never appear to take, always to give. This isn't sainthood, it's strategy in the service of fairness. If you are negotiating resources, make the benefit to the group visible and traceable. If you need a late night, explain the why and repay the cost with time, money, or opportunity. If recognition flows to you, redirect it like a river. Name names, cite specifics, write the notes that leaders remember to write. People can count. If they watch you take more than you contribute, their loyalty will decay in silence. If they watch you give more than you take, resentment never gets compound interest. But authority is not a fossil. The moods of a time shift, and so must your style. There will be seasons when the team needs a builder, and seasons when it needs a calm translator. Weeks when you must be the face, and weeks when you must be the floor your lieutenants stand on. Rejuvenate your authority by shedding roles that no longer fit and learning the ones the moment requires. Pay attention to the music underneath the metrics. Is the organization tired or twitchy, cynical or naive, proud or brittle? Adapt your tone to strengthen what is strong and soften what is strained. The point is not to become anyone for everyone. It is to evolve without betraying your core. All of this only matters if people trust that you are, in the end, on their side. That trust is built with 1,000 unglamorous moves. You keep confidences without announcing that you kept them. You protect people from avoidable harm and tell them the truth when harm can't be avoided. You make the hard calls in daylight, so rumors have nothing to drink. You let your best people outgrow your shadow, even if it means they leave. You remember that leadership is a borrowed position with an expiration date. If you treat it like an entitlement, you will lose it faster. If you treat it like a stewardship, you may keep it longer than you deserve. The crowd will still be fickle. One decision will anger them. One surprise will unsettle them. One rumor will bend the mood. But if you have built authority on service, clarity, vision, work, mystery, generosity, and adaptability, the swings will be smaller and shorter. People will grant you the grace of context and time because you granted it to them first. They will follow, not because you dazzled them into submission, but because they recognize themselves, safer, stronger, more capable, in your orbit. Before you sleep tonight, picture the next room you will lead. Ask yourself 3 quiet questions. What will I do in the first 5 minutes to prove I am here to serve, not to shine? What one standard will I model so clearly that no one needs a memo to understand it? What small mystery will I keep? What alive edge show so the room stays curious instead of comfortable? Oh, write down one action for each. Show up and do them. The fickleness of the crowd won't disappear, but it will matter less. Your authority won't be a gamble. It will be a craft, practiced in public, paid for in private, and strong enough to carry people where they could not go alone. Law 16, the Law of Aggression. See the hostility behind the friendly facade. We are kinder in public than we are in private, and kinder in words than we are in our silent thoughts. That gap is not hypocrisy. It is human nature, trying to manage its own heat. Men are not gentle, friendly creatures wishing for love, Freud warned, and whether you agree with his philosophy or not, you have felt the evidence in your own chest, the sudden rush when you're crossed, the sharp joy of winning, the impulse to push back harder than the situation requires. Under our civil exterior, there is a weather pattern of force, and what we do with it decides more of our life than almost any polite virtue we can name. Tonight, I want to invite you to see aggression clearly, not as a monster to fear or a license to harm, but as an energy that will rule you if you deny it and serve you if you train it. Start here. Aggression is not only violence. It is the drive that cuts through resistance, the spark behind decisive movement, the feeling in your body when you say enough and mean it. We exist on a spectrum. Some people bristle openly, some people smile while they maneuver, and some people turn the blade inward and punish themselves for every unmet need. Beneath all of this, insecurity hums. Most human aggression is a clumsy answer to the fear of being small, unseen, or helpless. Chronic aggressors often learn very young that control was oxygen. If they could dominate, they could breathe. If they softened, they would be swallowed. Understanding this doesn't excuse the damage, it explains the engine. An explanation is power, because power lets you step out of the default dance and choose your moves. Two myths make us easy to fool, by others and by ourselves. The first is the fantasy of a peaceful past, as if our great-grandparents lived in a soft golden age before our modern noise arrived. They didn't. The archives are full of quick tempers, hard hands, and loud rooms. The second is that we've evolved beyond aggression, as if manners cured instinct. They didn't. The form changes. The drive remains. You're not weak for having sharpness. You're weak when you pretend you don't, because the part you exile will find its way back through the cracks. Sarcasm dressed as humor, palmed-off tasks dressed as forgetfulness, icy silence dressed as maturity, or, when the strain is too much, a sudden explosion that costs you credibility you built for years. Better to know your weather and learn to sail it. One place aggression hides is in passivity. You have met the friend who is always late, drifting in with breathless apologies that sound warm and land cold. The lateness is not an accident. It's a quiet way to say, my time matters more than yours. You have met the person who is always in a crisis, broadcasting pain as a way to gather attention and control the room. You have met the colleague whose compliments are spiked. So impressive, especially with your limited experience. And you leave doubting the very strengths you walked in with. You have met the blame shifter who turns your efforts to clarify into proof that you are the problem. And you may have met the passive tyrant, the boss who can never be pleased and keeps the standards vague so everyone stays off balance. These behaviors are aggression painted in soft colors. Once you see the paint, you stop arguing with the tone and address the act. Calmly without theater. With the chronically late, you name reality in set terms. If we start at 9, we start at 9. If you arrive at 9:15, we continue without you. No anger, just boundary. With the sympathy magnet, you stop feeding the drama. You can care without becoming a stagehand for their show. You redirect. I'm sorry that's happening. What's the next action you'll take? No spotlight, just responsibility. With the insinuating doubter, you refuse the invitation to flinch. You can say, that's an odd way to put it, and return to your work. No defense, just poise. With the blame shifter, you anchor in facts. Here is what was agreed. Here is what was delivered. Here is what's next. No guilt, just clarity. And with the passive tyrant, sometimes the only winning move is to leave and reclaim your energy. Not every fight is worth fighting. Some arenas are designed to keep you bleeding. But reaction is not the highest use of this law. The highest use is to redirect your own aggressive energy before it becomes anyone else's problem, especially yours. Controlled aggression is the discipline to aim your force at real obstacles, not at people who happen to be nearby. It is the habit of converting irritation into initiative. You're angry about the delay, so you build the process. You're tired of being ignored, so you make the work undeniable. You're frustrated by your limits, so you train the weak link until it holds. This kind of aggression doesn't puff your chest. It lowers your shoulders and puts your hands to work. It doesn't stop, it builds. It doesn't punish, it completes. Controlled aggression also sharpens your no. You don't need to snarl to make it land. You can say, no, I can't take that on. Here's what I'm already committed to, and let the sentence stand without padding it in excuses. You can say, no, I won't be spoken to like that, and stop the interaction until the temperature drops. You can say, no, that's not accurate. Here's what happened, and let the facts shield you from the storm. The more you practice this clean refusal, the less you will feel the need to explode in the 10th conversation because you avoided the boundary in the first 9. If you find that your aggression turns inward, self-loathing, self-sabotage, perfectionism that punishes any human moment, you deserve the same clarity and the same boundary, only now it's with your own mind. When the critic ramps up, don't argue. Assign it a job. Thank you for the alert. If there's a specific fix I can make in the next hour, say it. If not, sit down. Then do one small hard thing and finish it. Nothing quiets self-hate like evidence of competence. And nothing grows competence like repetition. Remember that hostility often hides behind friendly facades because direct conflict is expensive. Most people want a wound without risk. That makes them predictable, and with practice, less frightening. The moment you stop personalizing every jab and start seeing patterns, you gain room to maneuver. You can choose not to rise to the bait. You can keep your pace when they try to speed you up, keep your volume when they try to shout you down, keep your standards when they try to make sloppiness contagious. Aggression wants a game. Controlled aggression changes the rules. This law asks you to elevate your courage without lowering your compassion. The person across from you is not a monster. They are a human being trying not to drown. Some will still choose to pull you under. Step away. Some will respond to your steady spine. With steadiness of their own. Stay and build. In both cases, you keep your dignity because you kept your center. You did not pretend to be a saint, and you did not let yourself be made a victim. You recognized the hot animal inside you, fed it honest work, and refused to let it run the house. Before you sleep tonight, replay a moment from this week when aggression touched your day. Maybe it was obvious and loud. Maybe it was subtle and sweet. Ask 3 questions. What was the insecurity underneath? Mine, theirs, or both? What would a controlled aggression have done in that moment? 1 boundary, 1 action, 1 clear sentence. What can I build tomorrow with the same energy I almost wasted today? Write the sentence you'll use simple and clean, then carry it into your next hard room like a tool, not a weapon. You don't have to be gentle to be good. You have to be responsible with your force. Channel it into work that matters. Use it to draw lines that protect what you value. Let it sharpen your decisions without hardening your heart. When you treat aggression as energy and not identity, you stop being surprised by the hostility behind the smile, and you stop being ruled by the storm behind your own. And in a world that often confuses softness with virtue and sharpness with vice, you will move with a steadier kind of strength, the kind that builds, repairs, and, when necessary, says a firm no so a better yes can live. 17. The Law of Generational Myopia. Seize the historical moment. You were born into a story already in motion. Before you chose your first word, the times had chosen a language for you. What counts as success? What feels dangerous? What makes a life admirable or small? You like to think you are a singular mind standing outside the crowd, but the truth is gentler and more unsettling. You are a product of the times as much as anyone, and the generation you were born into has shaped your thoughts and values, whether you notice it or not. To deny that is to be steered without knowing. To admit it is to reach for the wheel. If you can see the water you're swimming in, you can stop mistaking the current for your own decision and begin to use it, or swim against it, on purpose. Every generation carries a spirit, a mood, and a myth, an invisible script that tells its children where meaning lives. One era worships stability in the home. Another prizes disruption in the road. One tells you to bow to institutions. Another tells you to build your own. You feel this in the background of your day, in the slogans that sound wise, in the heroes your peers share, in the outrages that mobilize your friends, in the technologies you reach for without thinking. You did not draft these assumptions. You inherited them, and like all inheritances, they come with both wealth and debt. They give you a starting kit of symbols and tools, and they also narrow what you think is possible. The danger is not that your generation is wrong. It is that you might forget it is only one stanza in a longer song. History has a rhythm, and if you learn to hear it, your timing changes. Ibn Khaldun described a 4-generation cycle that still hums beneath our modern noise. The first generation is the break. The rough-handed founders who rebel, rip away old skins, and pay in blood and sleep to clear new ground. The second builds order over the cleared field. Rules, institutions, standards, the cold steel of discipline that slows chaos and turns survival into structure. The third inherits comfort and becomes pragmatic, less heroic, more managerial, seeking a pleasant life and negotiating with difficulty rather than wrestling it. The fourth grows cynical and lost, skeptical of the inheritance and unsure what to build, quick to critique, slow to commit, priming the wheel to turn again. No generation is pure. All contain mixtures. But if you look closely at your workplace, your politics, your culture, you will spot where the cycle lives. And once you see it, you stop yelling at the wind and start setting your sail. We like to judge the younger cohort as if we stand on neutral ground. They are soft, they are reckless, they are naive, they are heartless. But what feels like objective appraisal is often an illusion of perspective. You are comparing their beginning to your middle, their experiments to your routines, their raw edge to your polished mask. Meanwhile, a younger voice judges you with equal blindness. You are rigid, out of touch, addicted to process, allergic to risk. The remedy is curiosity. It is possible to hold pride in your formation and still ask what the times are asking now that they did not ask then. It is possible to love your teachers and still revise their lessons. To seize your historical moment, begin at home by challenging the values you inherited from the people you love most. Not to betray them, but to understand where they fit in the river of time. What did your parents worship? Security or adventure, obedience or originality, growth or status, reputation or truth? Which of those values still serve you when you test them against the reality you live in, not the one they braved? Which a straw you keep carrying because it would feel disloyal to set it down? The point is not rebellion for its own applause, it is integrity. You want a life chosen with both eyes open, not a costume tailored in a house you no longer occupy. That requires a posture most adults quietly lose, childlike wonder. A mind can calcify around 40 just as a joint can. You start mistaking familiarity for wisdom and boredom for clarity. The antidote is deliberate play with ideas from outside your decade. Spend time with the young not as a lecturer but as a listener. Ask what they fear and what makes them feel alive. Watch what their humor forgives and what it prosecutes. You don't have to agree to learn. You don't have to copy to evolve. Then spend time with the dead, read authors who wrote before your politics existed, and after your dogmas will fade. Let a 19th century sentence win through your 21st century habits like a fresh breeze. When you mix ages in your mind, your era loosens its grip. You stop mistaking trend for truth. Every field has its own generational weather. Technology sprints in ages and dog years. The arts drift between sincerity and irony. Institutions harden, crack, and reform. Markets grow wild on novelty, crash on excess, and stabilize on discipline. If you're an entrepreneur in a founding moment, courage is cheap and perseverance is rare. Your edge is outlasting the first storm. If you're a builder in a consolidation phase, discipline is the virtue. Your edge is process that preserves spirit. If you're a creative in an era of cynicism, sincerity becomes rebellious again. If you're a leader when the cycle is resetting, your work is to speak a longer horizon into a short attention world, to be patient in public without losing urgency in private. This law isn't only strategic, it is personal. Your own life moves through cycles that rhyme with histories. You were the rebel once, the order maker next, the comfort seeker after, the cynic for a season. If you can locate yourself on that wheel, you can stop pretending your present mood is permanent. Are you in a revolutionary phase where you should break routine and take the punch? Or are you in a consolidation phase where you should standardize, hire, write the manual, and make the work teachable? Are you drifting on comfort and calling it peace? Is your cynicism a pose that keeps you safe from trying? Honesty here saves years. You can reboot a spirit inside a single life if you refuse to let a phase become an identity. Ambition lives downstream of timing. To influence a generation, you must first respect its language. Speak to the younger with the humility of someone who remembers the heat of being unproven. Show them the parts of your craft that are invisible on the internet. How you handle boredom, how you repair after mistakes, how you ask better questions when data is thin. Then borrow their eyes to spot what you no longer see. New platforms that are not toys, new metaphors that are not threats, new ethics that are not decorations. Influence is not a sermon, it is a bridge. Walk both ways across it. At the same time, keep your anchor in older waters. Read the founding documents of your discipline and the critics who dismantled them. Study failures that looked inevitable in hindsight but felt persuasive up close. Let the long view correct the narrow lens of this week's outrage. Social feeds compress time until every moment screams a now or never. History expands it until you can hear a now and again. With that expansion, patience returns. You can hold your nerve during a loud fad. You can invest in work that takes years to ripen. You can be generous with those who are learning in public because you remember that learning has always been messy. We just didn't stream it. The goal is not to become a chameleon with no core. The goal is to become a person with a core so steady that it can learn. When you know what you stand for, clarity, courage, craft, care, you can adapt your methods without feeling false. You can change your tools without changing your soul. The times will keep changing with or without your permission. The question is whether you will pretend to be above them or choose to be awake inside them. Tonight, trace your life backward to the first signals of what your time taught you to love. Name one value you want to keep and one you will now lay down. Then look forward and ask what the moment is asking that your formation did not prepare you for. Maybe it is kinder leadership in a brutal industry. Maybe it is slower craft in a frantic market. Maybe it is a bridge between worlds that do not speak to each other. Write one sentence that captures the spirit you choose to serve, not the spirit that drafted you without consent. Put it where your morning eyes will find it. When you wake, act on it once. One conversation across an age gap. One page from a century you've never read. One decision that favors the long view over the dopamine of now. You cannot step outside history. You can, however, step into it as a maker instead of a mirror. See the generational currents, feel where you are in the cycle, refuse the lazy comfort of judging from a single angle, and let your curiosity rehumanize you. Do this and you will move through your era with a quieter power. The present will still tug, the future will still blur, the past will still sing, but you will walk with a sense that your life is not only being shaped by the times, it is shaping them back. Law 18, the law of death denial. Meditate on our common mortality. There is a sentence your body already knows, even when your mind refuses it. One day you will not wake up. In the instant you accept that, something paradoxical happens. The colors sharpen, the air tastes cleaner, the people you love look more like miracles than furniture. By connecting to the reality of death, we connect more profoundly to the reality and fullness of life. Most of us try to outrun this truth with noise, with plans, with glowing screens and small arguments. But the clock is not an enemy. It is a teacher that speaks in a precise and generous voice. Spend yourself on what matters. Begin with a picture that makes you wince, and keep it anyway. Imagine your final moments, not as a punishment but as a rehearsal for honesty. The room is quiet. A window holds the late light. A hand you have held 1,000 times is holding yours for the last. Feel the body's gravity, the narrowing of attention, the way the mind loosens its grip on possessions and tightens around what is essential. In that hour, what will still matter? Not the victories you collected to impress strangers, not the grudges you curated like a museum, not the hours you traded to avoid a difficult truth. What will matter are the small handful of names you loved well, the work you did that lifted someone other than yourself, the courage with which you met pain without passing it along. Keep this image near. It is not morbid. It is a compass. Use the years you have left as a living deadline for your life's project. You don't need to know the exact number to feel the urgency. The horizon is closer than you think, and that is a gift because it edits everything. When you remember that the pages are finite, you stop wasting so many lines on what reads badly. You say yes more cleanly to the few things that deserve you, and you say no without apology to the many that do not. You stop delaying the work you were born to attempt because perfection is a disguise for fear and time is not impressed. Begin the chapter you keep outlining. Call the person whose name keeps appearing in the margins of your thoughts. Build the thing that scares you because it will expose your limits and therefore grow them. Treat today as a studio, not a waiting room. Stand at a window at dusk and let a strange arithmetic steady you. Most people alive right now will be gone in 60 years, and soon after, every voice that comments on you will be silent, including the voice in your head that never tires of commentary. The realization is not meant to flatten you. It is meant to free you from the tyranny of petty judgments. If almost all of this audience is temporary, why perform for them? Why contort your hours to fit fashions that cannot last? When you observe mortality clearly, other people's approval becomes a lighter currency, and your attention becomes the treasure it always was. Spend it on craft and care. Spend it on the few lives you can actually touch. We are all a part of the brotherhood and sisterhood of death. No exceptions, no VIP room, no backstage pass. The most famous face and the most forgotten one end in the same quiet. The distance between us is not as wide as the angry stories suggest. If you let death stand beside you as a companion, Hardship changes shape. Pain stops feeling like an interruption and starts feeling like part of the curriculum. Adversity becomes an invitation to grow into a person who could handle it with dignity. You do not need to romanticize suffering to learn from it. You only need to refuse the reflex to numb and run. When a season turns dark, ask the question that death and time teach so well. What is this asking? Maybe it asks for patience instead of speed, clarity instead of applause, humility instead of another rescue fantasy. Maybe it asks you to break a pattern you have been rehearsing since childhood, to set a boundary, to forgive yourself without forgetting the lesson, to apologize without collapsing, to persist without bitterness. The response will not always be grand. Often it will be a small, faithful act repeated until it becomes a part of you. Growth rarely feels like triumph from the inside. It feels like honesty. Then, when the room gets too tight and your thoughts crowd like moths, go somewhere enormous and let the scale rinse you. Stand by the sea and the wind and the spray. Sit beneath a mountain, a desert sky, a forest older than your city, and let your pulse take its measurements from something that does not care about your brand. Contemplate the sublime, not to shrink yourself, but to right-size your worries. Size your worries. The vastness of nature makes our daily struggles seem small enough to lift and carry, not because they vanish, but because you remember you are more than the problem you're holding. You remember that every human who ever built or wrote or loved or fought also looked up at a night like this and felt for a moment both tiny and anchored. Under that sky, the future stops screaming and starts whispering. You can hear what your life's work wants from you next. There is a simpler practice you can carry into ordinary days. Behave as if goodbye is always possible. Leave rooms on a sentence you wouldn't mind remembering. Let the last text of the night be kind. Tell people what they did that mattered. Make your apologies before pride sours them. Forgive without publicizing it. None of this requires a sermon. It asks for a few more seconds of attention at the edges of your habits. When you live this way, your days gain a texture you can feel with your hands. The mundane starts gleaming. The coffee is not just fuel. It is a small daily ceremony. The walk is not just transit. It is a moving prayer. The task is not just a box. It is a chance to practice presence. Gratitude stops being a mood you wait for and becomes a discipline you choose. Death denial feeds two illusions, endless time and endless chances. When you discard them, you recover two strengths, focus and tenderness. Focus because you no longer have the luxury of scattering yourself into 1,000 unfaithful commitments. Tenderness because you understand that every person you meet is carrying the same fragile contract with time that you are. The impatient driver, the curt cashier, the distracted friend, they too are headed toward a final room. This doesn't excuse harm, it humanizes it. You can defend your boundaries without dehumanizing the person across from you. You can say the hard thing with a softer mouth. You can ask better questions than, how do I win? Questions like, how can I leave this a little truer than I found it? None of this means you must be solemn. In fact, the opposite tends to happen. When you stop pretending you will live forever, joy gets louder. Joy gets louder. Humor returns because you aren't trying to impress eternity. You're sharing an afternoon. The work becomes more playful because you're finally making it for the living, to be used, argued with, improved upon, not preserved like an artifact of insecurity. Even ambition purifies. You still want to climb. You just stop climbing over people who were never your obstacles. Tonight, close your eyes and step gently into that final room again. See the light. Feel the hand. Let the breath shorten. Then backwards through the hours, arrive at this moment, with the screen, the chair, the quiet between beats, and ask one clear question. If this were the middle of the last year of my life, what would I change tomorrow morning? Not someday, tomorrow morning. Choose one action that points to your life's project, one conversation that would make parting easier, one worry you can retire because it has never earned the fear you keep paying it. Write them where your morning eyes will have to read them. Then sleep like a person who has decided to live. You will forget this truth. Everyone does. The world will fill your pockets with distraction and call it destiny. When it does, return to the window at dusk, to the mountain, to the hand in the final room, to the strange arithmetic that sets you free. We are all members of the same quiet guild, bound by an ending we cannot cancel, and a beginning we receive anew every day. Meditate on our common mortality, not to darken your hours, but to lighten them, to strip away the trivial, to deepen your courage, to enlarge your kindness, and to spend your limited days on the work and the love that will still make sense when the last page turns. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Let me know in the comments below which law you found the most helpful. If you guys don't want to miss out on more videos like this one in the future, please hit the like and subscribe button because it really helps out. So thank you so much. Have a good day.